It is Sunday, April 1st, 2018, and welcome to episode 248 of Flicker Effect. This episode, we've got some box office numbers to talk about, and we will mostly be spending our time talking about Ready Player One, a new film from Steven Spielberg. We've also got some other stuff we've watched lately to talk about, and if we get to some news, if we have time, we might, but most likely I'm going to assume right now it's probably not going to happen. But welcome, everybody. By the way, I'm David Lott. Joining me this week is Bobby Jackson.
Hey, what's happening?
And Michelle Hillard.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
Happy Easter, guys.
Happy Easter.
Aw, happy Easter to you guys, too.
I don't know. I'm not going to put happy in front of this. I guess somewhat happy April Fool's Day.
Okay, you do not like April Fool's Day.
I'm not a fan. And I'm going to say this right now for everyone listening. Yes, we're recording this on April Fool's Day. There will be no April Fool's shenanigans going on the show. Everything we say is legit.
And when we say spoilers, we mean spoilers.
Or is it legit? No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Bobby's like,
You never
or
know.
is it?
Or is what he's saying right now an April Fool's joke?
Insert maniacal laugh here.
I'm not a fan of April Fool's Day, no. I don't know. I think just because I never think about it. And I guess that's probably the thing that gets most people when they get caught on April Fool's Day is that they're just not thinking about the fact that it's April Fool's Day. But
I feel like there's only a small percentage out there that actually care about it and look forward to it. And they're usually the people that are your class clowns and your pranksters. And they're looking forward to it because they know that the masses don't care and they can make jokes and they can pull off pranks. And I mean, yeah, like I'm not like against or I don't have any major issues with April Fools. And I kind of, I think in today's technology, everybody kind of does like little joke things. Like I saw one today, it was like bacon cereal. And I'm like, that's kind of funny. And I kind of wish that existed. And then there was one that like this brewery that's in town basically did like a fake like Cadbury egg filled with their stout. And I'm like, not gonna lie, kind of wish that existed too. But that's a sweet little thing. So like funny little things that happen. And I think those are kind of all in fun, all in gist. But like legit pranks that I've seen out there, I'm always like, oh god, ooh, no, I don't really like pranks on April Fools is what I think I've decided. I don't like getting pranked.
I think I used to like it a lot when I was younger, and I'm always hyper aware of April 1st. So generally speaking, every now and then I've been caught off guard, but generally I'm usually right there knowing what's going to happen. But I think I really started to turn a corner on my thoughts of April Fools when we got into the internet age, because at that point there were so much different websites that are around that will cover news and cover different things that are going on. And so then there'd start to be these stories of things that you would hope that would be true. And then it was like, George Lucas says that he's finally going to get around to doing a new series of Star Wars movies. And then you're just like, yes. And there's like April Fools. You're like, okay, that's not funny because I was actually looking
You're
forward
playing
to
with my
something
emotions.
like
My
that.
little heart got so excited.
Yeah, and so once that started to come around, and there'd be these different things that you could actually get your hopes up for, and there'd be this idea of that it could at least seem like it's a possibility, and to get those hopes dashed was like, that's just cruel. So I think once that started to happen, I was like, I'm done with April Fools. I just gotta ignore the news on that day because most of it is just erroneous.
I'm not gonna lie, my heart's a little saddened about the non-existence of this Cadbury egg that's filled with a chocolate marshmallowy beer stout. I mean, that sounds delicious.
Today is
I'm a little
either
sad about that.
today is like either Trump's favorite day or his worst nightmare because it's just filled with fake news. It's just like all day.
Fake news all
That's
day,
all
every
today
day.
is. Yeah, and that's the thing too. I should remember every year on April 1st is just like, you know what? Today's going to be the day where I take a full day off from like Facebook and Instagram
No
and
social
all
media.
of it. It's just absolutely
Just
no
nope.
social media.
No.
That way that accident doesn't, because that was my thing today. I'm scrolling through Instagram. I'm not, again, the premise is I'm not thinking about April 1st.
Had you had your coffee yet?
I think I did. I had 2 cups at that point.
Aw.
I'm scrolling through Instagram. I follow the Mandalorian Mercs official account. For those who aren't aware, they're like a costuming group for Mandalorian armor, Star Wars. And they post this post about breaking news, and it's a picture and everything, and it's talking about how Dave Filoni has been tapped to direct a standalone Star Wars film about, is it Ahsoka? Is that how you say her name?
Ahsoka?
It's
Ahsoka.
And Jennifer Lawrence is gonna be in the film. And don't get me wrong, not really for a second did I actually think that this was legit, but I'm reading it going, why in God's name would they be reporting that? Like, they're a pretty reputable group. Like, what the fuck is wrong with them? And so then I immediately start Googling, and I'm finding nothing. And I'm like, why on earth would they say that? That's just ridiculous. And then it takes like a full minute or two before it clicks, and I'm like, God damn it, fucking April 1st. Like, and I got caught on something else later in the day. I still wasn't thinking about it. And I'm
April
like,
1st, gotcha.
April 1st is the worst. I hate it. Which is terrible because I have a really great friend whose birthday is today, and happy birthday to her. But other than her birthday,
That would be a
April 1st
rough
is
day.
terrible.
It's a rough day to be born on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a friend who was born the day before, and I was like, wow, you eked that one out. Like, jeez.
So anyway, so guys, let's start off by talking a little bit about some stuff we've been watching lately. I was going to start off by saying, so as we know, this past week, Star Wars: The Last Jedi finally came to Blu-ray, DVD, 4K, however like you like to watch your physical media. It did. We gave away a copy on our Instagram page.
Oh, that's right. We did a little cool giveaway on our Instagram.
You sound so shocked, Michelle.
I just can't even believe this occurred. Where was I?
You were posting videos all over our Instagram.
That's right, I was.
I seem to remember that. Yeah.
I'm just trying to entice people. Like, hey, people, get on our Instagram. We do giveaways, and we give away really cool stuff.
Yeah, we gave away the steelbook copy of Last Jedi. Congrats to Tavares Thomas, who won a copy.
Yep.
It's on its way.
Man, he tagged some people.
He did, and it worked. He tagged a few people.
That dude tagged me. My phone was blowing up with I'm like, okay, I get it. Yep, I'm gonna turn notifications off today, I think.
So yeah, it's been available on digital download for a couple weeks, but I held off. I waited and got my own steelbook copy. So I got the Blu-ray copy of it. I didn't watch it again until this week. But the very first thing I did when I got that copy and put it in is I didn't watch the movie first. I was really interested in watching this documentary I'd been hearing so much about, which is The Director and the Jedi, which is a full-length feature documentary. I think it comes in like in an hour and 30 minutes, hour and 35 minutes, something like that. It's pretty long. And it's kind of a behind-the-scenes look at the making of Last Jedi. And it's very, we've seen stuff like this on other Blu-ray releases in the past. For me, it was very reminiscent of kind of the appendices on those Lord of the Rings releases, those extended edition releases that came out back when those films came out. Because it was very in-depth. I mean, it mainly just covered kind of pre-production and the actual filming itself. Didn't really go into the editing after the film or like recording the score and all that jazz. But mainly covered the film itself, and kind of it centers itself around this relationship between Mark Hamill and Rian Johnson, and the fact that Mark Hamill wasn't so happy-go-lucky about how Luke was being portrayed in this film. And I thought that was really interesting that they handled it that way. I think a lot of times when we see behind-the-scenes stuff like this for movies on Blu-ray releases, a lot of times they can be the kind of stuff you see typically produced by a studio where it's almost kind of propaganda for a film. Hey, this is how we made this amazing movie, guys. Isn't this movie amazing? Like, hey, everybody. Right,
and everybody's so all on board, and everybody loves it, and everybody loves each other on set, and like everything's all Partridge Family happiness.
Right, and not to say that this documentary was like critical of the film at all, but because it does kind of cover this relationship between Mark Hamill and Rian Johnson, and how Mark Hamill, very quickly told Rian Johnson, like, hey, I don't really agree with how you're handling Luke in this film. I will do whatever you want. I'm an actor. I'm a professional. I will, you ask me to act a certain way, I will do it. But if you ask my opinion, I'm not really thrilled with this. And it felt like a good way to kind of look at the film, especially considering the reaction on the film in general. You know, it's split Star Wars fans. A lot of people love it. A lot of people not so much. And knowing that there's that kind of general feeling about Last Jedi, I feel like this documentary does a good job of, you know, kind of representing that, you know, and that, hey, you know, this is a different take on Star Wars, and it wasn't all just great. Hey, everybody, let's just make a great Star Wars movie, and this is going to be awesome. And isn't this great, guys? This is so great. Like, no, like, I feel like it did a good job of kind of representing the general reaction to this film. And it was excellent. Like, I think a lot of people, you know, a lot of people that love Star Wars, and they just may be the kind of people that'll just automatically buy a Blu-ray release. And just because, hey, I want it in my library. But I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that a lot of times don't even pay attention to the special features. They're just like, I just want to own the movie.
Yeah.
You may own Last Jedi and not even realize this documentary is available. Like, you own it now. If you don't, and this is the case, you absolutely should watch this. It's very, very well done. I enjoyed it a lot.
A lot of Hamill's comments, I think, from the documentary were sent out into the media, right? Either just as the movie was getting released or afterwards. I can't remember anymore, but I remember it was kind of like, oh, wait a second, wait, what?
Yeah, that stuff about how he had said, he put it out there publicly that he told Rian Johnson, like, he disagrees, like, fundamentally with how he's handling Luke Skywalker. I forget the exact quote. And I expected that maybe to come up in the documentary, but it comes up a lot in the documentary, a lot more than I expected. But
so
yeah.
Does he, like, even after this whole thing is done, do you think he still is in the same boat, or does he feel better about it? Or
well, that's a whole we could talk about that for a long time, because he's even said stuff recently, like in terms of like deleted scenes, and you know, it almost still feels like he's kind of taking jabs at Rian Johnson for, you know, stuff with Last Jedi. But Bobby, it sounded like you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, from my understanding, this was done, I think, independently of Lucasfilm, wasn't it? Like
I forget who the director was, but
Anthony Wonky or something like that.
Basically felt like that they were given kind of free reign to cover the production and make a documentary where they were able to show. I mean, obviously, if you're watching this documentary, you should have seen Last Jedi already, and you would know spoilers. But they were able to film a lot of stuff when they were doing this documentary that even a lot of people in the production itself didn't know about yet, you know? Mm-hmm. And I won't get into stuff like that, because in a way I almost feel like it's spoilers for the documentary, even though, you know, most people listening to the show right now have seen Last Jedi. But yeah, there's moments in the documentary that come up later in the documentary, and I didn't know how that stuff was brought up to, say, Mark Hamill or this actor or that actor, and it was kind of really cool to see when watching the doc. Like, oh, wow, this is when he told him this, and this is when he told him that. And obviously the people filming this were finding it out too, or already knew. And I mean, they had to keep their mouths shut all this time. And
right.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Have you seen it yet, Bobby? I know you've been talking about it.
No, I haven't. I want to have a chance to try and watch it, just because it sounds so fascinating, and I'm really interested in seeing that back and forth that you get between Hamill and Rian Johnson, and just to see just the other aspects of the behind the scenes in general, just because this movie is just such a fascinating thing to look at, because it's really the one time that I can ever recall where the Star Wars fandom hasn't been on the same page, because for the most part, when you look at the new trilogy, the prequels, most people are on the same page of thinking that they're not really that great. Then people maybe vary on the degrees in which they think it's bad, but wholesale, generally speaking, most people don't think those are great films. And obviously the original trilogy is beloved, and we're only 2 movies into this new one, but this second one has just completely given a different vibe, and such a great divide between the fandom that is just to see any little snippets of where this all came from and how it got to be the way it was is just something I think I would really like and glom onto, just to be able to see how it all kind of unfolded in the way that it did.
So did you purchase it, or did you digital download?
Neither. I have not bought this movie yet. And I think my plan is I don't know that I necessarily want to own it per se, because I don't know that I would go back and look at it again after seeing it. Well, I think I saw it at least twice in the theater, but maybe even 3 times.
I thought you saw it 3 times.
Yeah, I was going to say 3 times. And so, I mean, I feel like I've gotten my fill out of it, but I think that what I would probably end up doing is just waiting till the 9th movie came out and then buying a box set once they did all the 3 of those movies as a box set.
Right. Well, yeah. So I watched that first, and then not the same night, but a day or 2 later, I forget when it was, I watched the film. This was my 3rd viewing. I saw it twice in the theaters. And to recap, I mean, I'm not going to go into spoilers, but yeah, that first time I saw it, I thought it was a good film, but I was disappointed by it for sure. Definitely things about it I was not a fan of.
Yeah.
But I'd only taken it in the one time, and there was, I don't know, I kind of was left going, I don't know what to think of this. And then I saw it again, and I talked about it on this show too, and I was like, you know what, especially because I went into it the second time knowing what I was getting into, basically. I enjoyed it more. I didn't really feel any differently about the stuff that I was critical about, but I just enjoyed the film more the second time around. I saw it a 3rd time now this week since I watched it on Blu-ray. And I actually think I disliked it more than I did the first time when I saw it this 3rd time.
Man.
I was not happy with it this 3rd viewing, and actually to the point that I almost don't know if I could anymore say that I actually think it's a good movie. That's how much I disliked it the 3rd time I watched it.
Wow.
And I'm saying that after having watched the documentary, like The Director and the Jedi, where even though that documentary wasn't all, like I said, it wasn't all like, hey, this movie's great, but it's still, you watch something like that, and I think anybody, I feel like when you watch something like that, you have a lot more respect for the film that they're talking about, even if you didn't maybe like it all that much. But then you watch how much work went into it.
You give them a process, and
you're like, oh man, I can respect all this work they did, and maybe some of the stuff this director said about like why he did this and why he did that is now kind of setting in, and it's starting to make sense to me. I would almost expect that after I had watched that documentary, I was going to go into my 3rd viewing and come out of it going, you know what? Now I like this movie even more. I was kind of going into it thinking that was going to happen. And no, a lot of the stuff I wasn't a fan of, and this will be hard to do without talking about spoilers, but a lot of the stuff I wasn't a fan of those first 2 times, now I hate even more.
You went from disliking them to absolutely hating them.
Yeah. I mean, like, for instance, that moment of humor at the very beginning of the film that I have already complained about, the more I see it, the more it makes me insane. Like, a more, again, centered around one particular character involved in that moment of humor. I really hate that moment. and then, yeah, there's just a lot of other stuff, which we could do a full-on spoiler conversation about this movie again, and we could all get into it maybe one day, but
right.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think I'm to the point now that I most certainly won't really sit down and watch this movie again until I see episode 9. And I am very curious to see episode 9 and then see what I think about how Last Jedi fits into this puzzle, because as it stands right now, I'm not happy with it. And I'm saying that as someone who, I don't really have a problem with some stuff like the way Luke is handled. I know that's a big complaint for people, including Mark Hamill himself. And actually that doesn't bother me so much. Like I'm okay with the way we see Luke in this film for the most part. A couple scenes, there might be an exception, but
it's not so much Luke. It's just like the scenes they're making Luke kind of do. But not so much his personality and what he's going through.
Like the basis for how we now see Luke in this movie, the way he is, this kind of disgruntled former Jedi. Like, I know that's a problem with a lot of people. A lot of people are like, oh man, this isn't Luke Skywalker that I know. Like, who is this guy? Like, I expect him to be a hero. Like,
but 20 years later, man.
Yeah, I can buy into how he is in this movie. That I don't have a problem with. But there's a lot of other stuff I do have a problem with, and even some new stuff that when I watched it this third time, then I'm like, oh, you know what? I kind of bought into that before, and now I don't. Like now, the more I see it, the more I'm like, I'm sorry, that just seems too convenient to make this plot work, and then this doesn't make sense to me, kind of stuff, you know?
Right.
And then it's still the whole Canto Bight section is just terrible. Like I basically wish that whole thing didn't exist, but yeah, I don't know. I watched it a third time. I'm not happy. And, you know, maybe I'll have it on if my kids want to see it at some point. But otherwise, I'm basically, I think, done with Last Jedi now until we see episode 9. That's kind of where I am. The only difference will be is I might watch it again to watch it with the commentary. Well, I haven't done that yet.
I could see that,
but
just out of sheer curiosity.
So yeah, that's popping in my head right now. Maybe I'll watch it one more time for that, but then that'll be it. And yeah, that's where I am. I watched the deleted scenes too, by the way, real quick. And I mean, without going into those, but they were interesting. But I will say, yeah, there were a couple, I guess, that were like, oh man, why'd you cut that? Especially because a lot of the deleted scenes are very brief. They're very quick moments. Like there's only a couple of deleted scenes that are like, wow, this is a whole section you had to cut. Otherwise, a lot of them are just like a scene we already saw with just like some added like few seconds of footage to them where you're like, yeah, I guess when you have a long movie, you got to always kind of chop stuff somewhere to shorten it down. But did you really have to cut that like 5 seconds of film? You know, like,
right.
I don't know. Other than that, I mean, I would say most of the scenes I get why they were cut. Some of them definitely why they were cut. But the stuff that if I wasn't a fan of them being cut, it was because they were just so brief, and they did add a lot to that particular scene. But.
Well, I saw the film for a second time finally.
So you saw it once in the theater.
I've only seen it once in the theater, and I had my second viewing of this film.
And then the backtrack to that, of the group of us, you definitely seem the most positive about the movie.
I would say of the group of us, I was the most positive. Yes, I still had a lot of issues with this film.
Absolutely, but
I will say, and I really probably should have listened to that part of the show. What my opinion was, I feel like I left the film kind of going, I'm cool with it. I'm cool. Like I hated Canto Bight, and I had other issues, but overall, I was like, it's cool. It's fine. We're moving forward. We are in a new section. It's cool. We're fine. We can move with this. This is fine. I finished the second viewing, and honestly, like wow, what a backslide. Like I'm having a really hard time saying I even enjoy this film. Like I'm with you. Like I literally like I don't think it's a good film. I think I can almost say that now. Like I'm not quite there, but I'm really close to saying it's not. Like I almost feel like I could lump this with the prequels.
Ooh.
Like and it's really even kind of hard to describe, but there's just the way it's done. Like there's just almost like a sugariness to it. And I'm saying that, and I know there's a lot of dark themes in it.
For sure.
But I feel like a lot of stuff is just so almost like it's so homage-y. We're just paying homage to things, and it just really rubs me the wrong way. And I say that, and the first film kind of felt that way to me. I felt like the first one was a little too homage-y and a little too sugary for me too. But this one, I don't know, like rewatching it, I was just like, oh my giddy aunt, this is not good. Like, but I will say, like, I still like this path that they put Luke on. I still like this Luke, and I still like this Rey. And I'm still cool with Poe and Finn. I still feel though that the entire Canto Bight thing is just not necessary to the plot line, and it just is so convoluted. I will say though, there's a slight I have a little more appreciation. I don't know if it's just because I was just in the theater and I was just lost in the whole thing, but people like really watch the Canto Bight scene from the start, kind of seeing the layers and the leveling of what they did at the very beginning of that scene as you're entering in the casino and you're seeing all these new aliens and just the setting. I have an appreciation for what they did in that scene. I will say the layering and the work they must have put in that looks like, really looking at it, I was like, wow, this is actually really, it's really layered thick. And they had a lot of extras and just a lot of extra stuff happening. And I was like, I appreciate that portion of that section of the film. I will give Rian Johnson credit for that. I feel like that was really inventive, and I love seeing different creations come out of the Jim Henson Creature Shop. That was kind of cool. And I feel like I didn't appreciate that portion the first time, and I appreciate it more this time. But really, the storyline itself of that section, I could get like, I really don't like it now. Like, I hate it now. Like, I watched it. It was like disgust. I find Rose to be even more obnoxious than I thought she was the first time. Her character, just, I don't know what it is about it. But I'm with you. There's definitely stuff that just I didn't like to begin with, and now I'm like, oh god, I hate this. Like you're saying, the whole scene with Hux at the very, very beginning, that whole joke with Hux, I hate that, and his interaction with Snoke. But there's still positives. Like, there's still things that I get out of the film that I really, really enjoyed. Like, in the first scene, the entire bombing scene, like, that is still spectacularly done. The whole interaction with them attacking, that scene is pretty brilliantly done. And then, you know, I won't get into it, but the throne room scene with Snoke and his guard, that scene holds up for me. I'm super into that scene. Luke and Rey on the island, good, but really just, I feel like everything else in between was just not good. And the thing that's really frustrating, like, everybody's like, oh, Leia, and I'm frustrated because I feel like the lines of dialogue that they had Leia delivering, and I'm saying this, and I acknowledge the age of Carrie Fisher and the age of Leia in this, just sounded like stuff old women would say. It just didn't sound like something a strong general would say, irregardless of her age. It just sounded like, I don't know, it just didn't sound like it should have. It just sounded like, well, this is what, it just didn't sound like even like a strong Leia. It just sounded like pretty princess old woman Leia. Like, and that frustrated me, and I was like, I don't like this. I don't like the words coming out of her mouth. It wasn't Carrie Fisher's delivery of them or anything. It was the actual dialogue, and I'm like, this doesn't work for me. I don't know. And so, yeah, maybe I'm getting nitpicky, but my feelings, no bueno. No bueno at all. Yeah. All
right. Well, yeah. I mean, my takeaway, yeah, after our first review, there's no doubt you had some problems with it, like we all did, but definitely seem more positive, because even times we would bring up the movie after that review, and I felt like you were even somewhat defensive of it, like, you know.
Don't give it that much of a hard time, guys. Come on.
And yeah, it's interesting to now see, like after your second viewing, like how much your opinion is different.
No, the hell with this movie. And it's sad because I like Rian Johnson's work from what I've seen of it. This is just not.
I do too, and I still stand behind. Like, I'm thrilled to see what he will do with a trilogy of films where he can just kind of do them from scratch and it not be affiliated with any of the characters in Star Wars that we already know and love, and he can do his own thing. I'm very, very interested to see what he does. I think he's a very talented filmmaker, but this I don't know, like. In a lot of the problems I have with this, I don't even know is necessarily completely his fault. I think it's more a general problem with the way that Lucasfilm is handling the making of these movies, you know, the way they're being overseen.
I think a lot of it is Disney. I think that's all I can really say about that.
Right.
But
yeah, I would ask Bobby, hey, when next time you see it, I'd be curious to see how you feel, but it sounds like you're not planning on watching it anytime soon.
Not anytime soon, no.
It's funny. I'm kind of with you. Like, I don't need to see this ever again until after I see the next one, excluding if I watch this with commentary. I could watch this one more time with commentary just for sheer curiosity.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just kind of curious as to what gets said by whom and by just kind of what the thought processes were. I could totally see doing that, but I don't need to see this film at this point in juncture, I can almost say ever again, but definitely probably not until after. I might see it again after and see where I feel about it and be like, oh, okay, maybe, whatever. But right now it's down there.
By the way, there's also a feature in the bonus features of this release that you can watch the entire throne room scene without because Andy Serkis, as we know, plays Snoke, and he's doing motion capture for that character. Mm-hmm. And we get to watch that. You can watch that entire scene, but without Snoke being digitally, put in the place of Andy Serkis. You can actually watch it with Andy Serkis on set in his motion capture suit, And it's really fascinating to watch because Andy Serkis is an amazing actor.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate after watching that, I feel like it's too bad that Snoke couldn't have been a character that was just Andy Serkis with like maybe some makeup on or something. And it could have just been him on set playing a character in costume. And because he's just so effing good and hey, the Snoke looks great as he is. I think they did a pretty good job with the way he looks digitally. But I think it would have been even better if he could have just been a character that was just a real person with maybe some prosthetics if you had to or whatever.
Or even just maybe dumbed back some of to keep it a little bit more like him.
Yeah, just had Andy Serkis actually playing this part in a costume and maybe some makeup or something, I think would have been even more effective because, God, he's amazing. He's an amazing actor. I mean, it said that about him in Black Panther, that role he had in that I thought was incredible.
Not even in it for that long.
And he's not. And
it's only a few minutes here and there.
The stuff that Andy Serkis does in motion capture, and that's obviously what he's known for, is incredible. But the more I think we've seen of him doing stuff outside of that, and just as an actor, I mean, he's very, very good. And it was really cool to see.
Yeah.
You should check that out too. Michelle, since you were already talking about that, anything else you watched?
Really the only big thing, and it's not like a big thing, but in TV, the big thing everybody's been talking about is this reboot of Roseanne, the TV show. So it's been 20 years since the last episode aired, 30 years since the first episode aired. And, quick backstory, Roseanne is a TV show that I watched as it was airing. Like, it was kind of like a given almost every week. My family and I would tune into it. And I will say probably towards the last few seasons, not as much, but I would say definitely the first five or six seasons, I feel like I very, very comfortably say we watched them as they aired. And even afterwards, when it went into, what is it when you... Syndication, thank you. It went to syndication. I'm pretty sure I watched every episode a second, if not a third time. So I really, really enjoyed Roseanne. I like that it was always about extremely realistic people. And I would say it's a very large percentage of the U.S. and how families are and the struggles that families go through. And they're all very different. A lot of it on that show was financial issues. And a lot of it was how to deal with the kids and different personalities of the kids and behaviors of the kids and what to do, what's in the best interest of their children. And, some stuff got political, and there was stuff that was at the time, very on edge with what was happening. And, people weren't really talking about women's rights, gay rights, and just everything. Like, it was all very, new and fresh and wasn't talked about. Anyways, so they've rebooted it. It aired this week, and they were given an hour slot, so they did the first 2 episodes officially. And I mean, yeah, there's moments I was like, oh, this is kind of cool to see everybody back on screen together, the gang's back together kind of thing. But, as you watch the episode, it's kind of like, oh, wow, some of these guys haven't been practicing their skill for a while. And I don't know if the writing is really quite all there with it. And I feel like there's almost, I don't know, it's bizarre. I feel like they are supporting certain things and not other things. I think the biggest thing is that, Roseanne is a Trump supporter, and that's fine. And I think even then she kind of still struggles with that almost in a weird way. And then her sister Jackie was a Hillary supporter, I guess, during this whole situation. Well, Jackie's dove off the total left side, and she's, wearing a pussy hat, and she is just all about women's rights and everybody else's rights, and just full on left. Like, she went there, and Roseanne is somewhere off of to the right, somewhere in the middle there. So you're watching it, and in the second episode, they really kind of delve into their grandson, who I think it's safe to say is transgendered. I don't think he quite even understands it yet, but they're kind of trying, that's what it's going with. And eventually, Roseanne is on board with it, because when it comes down to it, and her family, she loves them, and she will literally go to bat for anybody, no matter what. Like, she almost doesn't even care. Like, you could inject purple dye into your skin and she'd still love you. That's how Roseanne is with her family. She might later on, like, smack you over the head about it, but she'll back you up. So she gets on board with it. Eventually Dan gets on board with it. But at the same time, like, it's interesting. It's like, wow, you're supporting a guy who doesn't really care about transgendered people and their rights. And your one granddaughter is half African American. And that's a whole nother thing. They show her for, like, the hottest of hottest seconds, and that was kind of over with her. And I'm like, I feel like you're being very picky and choosy about what you're going to support. At the same time, she's still backing somebody that has he doesn't back what's happening in her own life. So it's interesting to see that it's almost like, do you understand how weird that is, Roseanne?
Well, I mean, I will say real quick, because I did see these two. And we don't have to get into a whole thing about this, but my takeaway was that when you see these confrontations between her and her sister and they're fighting about it, it was more that she wanted to vote for him. She chose to vote for him, but now in hindsight, I did get the impression that she's a little like, well, he talked about jobs and this is what I was, that's why I voted for him. But now it almost like she understands, like, yeah, he's not all he was. Right. I was hoping he would be. So I didn't take so much like, oh, she's still just a full on, hey, I love Trump, and that doesn't make sense. No, I don't know. That's how
let me come full thought on this real fast. So even though I feel like they're picking and choosing things, and again, it's only been 2 episodes, there's still a few more episodes to go. And there was a couple other things. So we'll see how it all kind of develops, and maybe the whole arc is that she realizes that is not a proper representation of how America is anymore. Because I feel like the whole idea behind Roseanne was that she was always kind of representative of the average man, the average woman. This is just how it is. So it'll be interesting. I think I'm going to keep watching, because I think that will be interesting. However, yeah, I think unfortunately a lot of the jokes really didn't hit for me. I feel like the writing was a little rough on those kind of situations. But at the same time, like, they're still not pulling punches when it comes to things that are happening in today's world, when it comes to sex or religion and race and all of the like, they're still going to that point, and I think a lot of TV shows still aren't doing that. So I applaud that, and I'm curious to see how that will continue. But I will say, as far as like the jokes, everybody's interactions felt a little forced.
Right.
But I don't know. It'll be curious to see how it finishes out.
I mean, yeah, as I said, I watched it too, and I'll say real quick, like, I went into it, and then the backtrack too for me with Roseanne. I also really watched Roseanne a lot. Like, yeah. Honestly, I say that. I don't know that I ever watched like the very end of Roseanne. Like,
you should. I'm not saying those were the good seasons, but you should, just to get the whole.
But I did feel. Like, our family watched it very, very regularly. Like, right. That was definitely a show that we watched it, every week.
Tuesday nights, man.
Yeah. But I went into this going, this whole like reunion thing that's kind of a thing right now, and Will and Grace has done it, and now this, and I'm just like, I'll check it out, I guess, to see, but I kind of didn't really care. I felt like it was going to be more of just a reunion kind of shtick, like, hey, let's see these people we haven't seen in forever, and I don't know, it just be too sticky. I don't know how to explain it, but I was actually impressed that they are still going out of the way to kind of bring up interesting subjects like the grandchild, and I was impressed by it. So I'll keep watching. I mean, maybe I won't finish it if I don't like where it goes, but I mean, it's a little odd when you're so used to how a show used to look, and now you're watching it and it's the exact same setting and the sets all look the same, but now we're watching it in 2018 and it looks like a show made in 2018. It looks very clean and HD. High def.
Super high def.
So that's just kind of odd. Like, I feel like it almost should look how it did.
There should be a little
back
more
in my
grit.
4x3 days. But
like they were making jokes about how dirty their living room is and you shouldn't be cleaning the living room. You're bringing up all the dust. And I'm like, yeah, I'll have to agree. I feel like it looks so much cleaner than it used to. Like, I'm like, it shouldn't look this clean. Like, that's not how she had her house. Like, it was interesting.
Bobby, by chance, did you watch it at all?
I didn't, but I did record it. I just hadn't got around to watching it. And mostly I didn't watch it the first night it came on, and then started hearing a little bit about all the other stuff that's going on around it. It made me pause in terms of watching the show, just because it seemed like I didn't know necessarily how politicized it'd be going into it, but that's not the show I was kind of expecting or signing on for. And that maybe that's just within the first episode or two, just to get things going. But I mean, I used to watch it all the time as well when I was younger and when it was first on. And I remember at that time, it was interesting because it was, Roseanne said it herself at the time back then, that like her family was the opposite of the Huxtables in terms of the Cosby Show, and how they were this blue collar family. And she would sort of make fun of the Cosby Show in that sense of being sort of light and fluffy, as opposed to her dealing with these real sort of issues and everything. And it was interesting because I think when I was younger and growing up, I think if you were African American and you watch TV shows and you watch shows that had predominantly black cast or just aimed at that audience, most of the shows were about blue collar people that were, trying to make do and more focused on family dynamics and bills and stuff like that. So when a show like Cosby Show came around, it was more like, well, it's kind of good to see ourselves in a different light, as opposed to that same sort of sad story that we all know, that we'd like to see something different. So I think with it was sort of the opposite for most of the rest of America, because they're so used to shows that it just shows like people who seem successful or like in a life that doesn't seem to cause most struggle. It'd be most just general stuff. And then for them to get a show like Roseanne was more of a revelation. And I watched it at the time and did enjoy Roseanne's sense of humor and the dryness, and always at the core of everything was that family unit and just the aspects of what that meant and those bonds that were created. And that was the heart of the show. And so fast forward to today, and it seeming to be a little bit more of I don't know, I wouldn't say propaganda-ish because I haven't seen it, but just that seemed to be the headlines coming out of it, in the sense that it was just more politicized, even though you had one character representing one side and the other. And then it was just kind of like, well, I'll wait a few episodes and see how it progresses, and see if they can kind of get their rhythm back and find what made the show special in the first place. So I'm kind of just holding off for right now.
And I kind of get what you're saying, because before I did watch it, I'd like talked to my mom, and my mom had watched it, and she had brought up the whole like thing about Trump and Hillary coming up in the show, and my reaction was like, oh really, they kind of go down that road in this? And then my immediate reaction was like, really, I don't really know that I want to watch that. But then when I watched it and saw how they did it, which by the way, they never actually bring up any name, they never say Trump, they never say Hillary,
they don't,
but I don't know. All I can say is that it didn't actually bother me. I felt like it made sense, considering our day and age and what's going on in the world and how divisive our president can be, and how divisive that election was. It I guess in a way now I do feel like it would be odd maybe to not bring it up. And
right.
And again, I don't feel like, because when I heard that, I felt like, I guess I kind of get that, yeah, it's a blue collar family, so maybe they would be Trump supporters. But at the same time, knowing, how open-minded they can be, it didn't make sense to me. But then when I saw the way I like I said already, I felt like Roseanne's reaction to it was more that it was like, I just felt like I should vote for him because of jobs, but now maybe I'm kind of second guessing myself. I felt like that made sense. So actually I don't have a problem with it. And
I feel like that's actually what the core of the season is going to be. It's not so much exactly, oh, she's a Trump supporter. It's that she voted for him, and now she's going to slowly throughout the season kind of come to terms with like more of a realization of what's going on in our culture at this time right now. Right. What's really going on. I think she's going to slowly have some things revealed to her, and she's going to have to come to terms with some things on her own. So yeah, I think that's kind of why they started it out this way, but it's definitely not about the juxtaposition of those two people, running for government. It's more about thought processes that are happening out in the public and the juxtaposition of those per se. Right. But yeah, no, it was always the show that I think, other than say like All in the Family, was the TV show that was really putting more, it was just different than all the other shows about, Caucasian people. Like, we were always so, sugarcoaty, and life was beautiful, and Leave It to Beaver, and, the Cleavers kind of thing. And then All in the Family came out, and that was probably the first one that really got a little bit nitty gritty. And then Roseanne came out, and it really kind of brought it home that, yeah, no, this is actually how it is. This is actually life. But anyways, I'm curious to see where the season will go, and I'll keep checking in on it. So anyways, I just wanted to bring it up because it's been interesting. It's been an interesting thing. It's been a big thing. I feel like it's been everywhere. Mm-hmm. Promotion wise, they have promoted the crap out of this. Right. And the first episode, I will agree, is very reunion-y, sugar-coated, but the second one kind of gets into the nitty-gritty. So we'll see how it goes from here.
And by the way, real quick, I kind of already talked about some stuff I'd seen, but I forgot to mention I watched the first episode of Barry on HBO. I think the second episode airs tonight while we're recording this, but it's a new show on HBO, Sunday nights. Stars Bill Hader, who is a hitman in the Midwest who travels to LA for a job and ends up kind of getting caught up in an acting class and in the entertainment industry. Decides he wants to be an actor. And yeah, it's kind of a dark comedy, and I will say I really enjoyed the first episode. I'm definitely going to keep watching it, especially because they're 30-minute episodes. So I'm always a fan of a good 30-minute show because I'm like, they're so easy to consume. Like Silicon Valley, I love, is they're just like, I can watch this whenever. It's so easy. Doesn't feel like that big 1 hour show commitment. But the only bummer is like, I enjoyed the first show, and looking at it, they're only 30-minute episodes, and I think there's only like 8 episodes in this first season. I'm like, geez,
that's quick.
That's quick.
Oh, geez, that's nothing. But that's like Bobby's breakfast.
But what you know about my breakfast?
I was gonna say, you just consume that and be like, all right, breakfast is over. Like, that's like nothing to you. You're so like watching so much stuff. Like,
what am I gonna binge before I go to work today? I can watch Barry.
Like 8 30-minute episodes. You're like, that's breakfast. That's got my whole day ahead of me.
But yeah, I wanted to mention real quick. I saw it and I enjoyed it. I'm gonna keep watching it. Yeah, Sunday nights on HBO.
I remember seeing the trailer for it and thinking it looked kind of funny.
Yeah, it seems pretty good, but it's just been the one episode so far. But
cool.
I liked it. Bobby, what have you been watching lately?
Yeah, well, it's been a while since we talked about stuff we watched, so I have a little bit of a list. But in the interest of time, I'll go through it pretty fast. And,
okay.
Yeah, I guess if anyone out there wants to know more about what I thought, they can always, ask me on Twitter or one of the other social media accounts that we have. But the first thing I saw was The Terror. That's on AMC. Just started last week. It's about this naval crew that is searching for passage through the Arctic. And they're on these ships. I can't remember exactly the time frame of it, but it seems like it's sometime in the 1800s. And their ship is pretty much at one point dead in the water, and they have to get out because the ice is so thick that they're trying to break through the ice and trying to figure out if there's anything around here. And they soon discover that they're being hunted by something, but they don't know exactly what. And the show itself, it moves pretty slow because I think that first night they showed either it was 2 episodes. I think it was either 2 episodes back to back or it was one long pilot episode, but it was like 2 hours, and it all moved fairly slow, and it's pretty dry in terms of the content, but I still found myself interested in it just because of this thing that's out there that's hunting them that you kind of catch a glimpse of in the first episode. So I'm like, okay, I want to see where this goes. So I'm kind of tuning in terms of like just following along with the story, but not necessarily saying that it's the best thing I've seen or it's a must-see new show that's come out. But I'm interested just because of that nature of it, to where it seems like there's something going on that no one really knows about, and I'm curious to see how it unfolds. The other thing I watched was Krypton, that came on Sci-Fi Channel. It's actually 2 episodes in, and this takes place with Superman's grandfather on the planet of Krypton. His name is Segel, and he gets wind of a impending threat to Krypton before the whole planet is destroyed. And it incorporates this element of this character named Adam Strange, who's this character from Earth who has traveled light years in being able to warn Segel about this threat. And this threat in the previews you see is Brainiac, who's coming to essentially destroy Krypton and destroying other planets in his path, and just by really creating these little small I don't know what you would call them, just kind of like monuments maybe, or not monuments, but like I don't know what you would call them, but like he doesn't destroy them, but he kind of keeps them as keepsakes, as these whole pieces of these planets, and just like a museum. There you go. That's what I was trying to say, kind of thing. So the first 2 episodes, it was okay. The special effects for it seemed pretty decent, but the weird thing to me about watching that show was the language. First of all, it's like, well, they're Kryptonian, so I mean, I don't expect them to speak in some sort of weird language that no one could understand, but it's weird in the way that they do speak, even though they're Kryptonian, because they'll, like Segel's character was in the first episode, he kept calling people mate, and I'm like, what? Like, would someone on Krypton call someone mate? Like, hey, could you get me another beer, mate? I'm like, what? And so then there was like that,
right?
And then
like, did Krypton break off apart and went down to Australia or something? Like,
yeah. And then the other episode I saw, he told someone to go to this tailor, and that the tailor would hook him up. I'm like, wait, what do you mean he would hook him up? Like, how's that language on a different planet that they would use that kind of phrasing?
He's in urban America now.
It's very strange. So the way that they talk, but there's also interesting dynamics going on, because it sort of tries to play this whole Game of Thrones aspect, to where there's these different houses, and there's the House of El, there's the House of Zod, there's a couple, I think at least one more, that's a sort of a faction, and they're all kind of trying to procure their part in their place in this world, and the way that they try and live. But I'm in enough to watch it. Considering when I first heard about this premise, I didn't want to have anything to do with it. So the fact that at least now, knowing kind of what they're sort of doing with it, and it's not just this show specifically about the planet of Krypton way before Superman was ever born, that there's some other elements into it. It has me interested, just sort of like the Terror show, where I'm kind of curious to see where it's going to go with things.
Yeah, actually, I forgot I watched that. I watched the first episode anyway. I haven't seen that second one. And I'm with you. Like, I mean, unlike you, I actually was I definitely think I was more open-minded than most of us.
You were, yeah.
Krypton. But I don't know. I feel like it has the possibility of getting better. I mean, I didn't love that first episode, but I thought it was, as a DC fan, as a fan of Superman comics, and I I found it interesting, especially just kind of seeing that glimpse of Brainiac. I'm like, all right, I if anything, I just want to see it to see where that goes.
Right.
But
yeah, no, that's interesting.
Because the production value, I think, is pretty damn good. It's obvious that Sci-Fi has put some money into this, and I kind of dig the look of it. Even though overall, I will say in that first episode, it does at times though feel kind of boring. Even though it looks good, it's all kind of the same.
Yeah.
So that could get kind of dull after a while, I could see. But I don't know.
I mean, they based it more off of the same kind of premise that Man of Steel was going with.
Yes.
So I can kind of understand that. Like, it's not like that was the most colorful section of the film.
No, I mean, I guess you could say that portrayal of Krypton is not that colorful in general. So, I mean, what all could they do? But I don't know. I feel like there could be some more production design there to make it, hopefully there will be some to make it more visually interesting and not just all the same look.
Gotcha.
But I guess that's kind of what I mean. I don't know. And I felt like the first episode was enough that I'm like, okay, I want to keep watching it just to see where this goes. Again, if anything, just for Brainiac. Like that.
Yeah.
I was like...
Yeah, it's really the first time he's been brought up in a major like show kind of way. I mean, it's always been kind of like in the comics and then in like the animated stuff, but never really like film.
Right.
Not at least to this degree and to look so spot on in terms of the way the character looks either.
Yeah. So for that reason, almost alone, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna keep going with this, see where this goes. Hopefully this gets better, I should say. But it wasn't bad. It's just it definitely wasn't a pilot that like completely pulls you in. You're like, oh my God, I got to keep watching this. But if you are a fan of the source material, it will say it's worth a look. I mean, the whole shtick with the guy coming from Earth and I guess back in time and also out to Krypton to send this message, that whole part of it, I was just like, I feel like this is unnecessary. Like that'll be the one thing that I'll be bothered actually by the show is if it feels that need that we have to have this major tie to Superman. Like, you know what? If you just make a good show, if you have good writing, good characters, yeah, you're very loosely tied to Superman because obviously this is Krypton, but you don't really need to go all out of your way, I think, to make this big Superman connection. And I feel like that's all they're doing by having this guy come from Earth and this American, I think he was, kid or whatever, like pop up. And that feels a little like, really, what are we doing? Like that was, I thought was kind of stupid, but other than that,
well, especially because he looks nothing like his comic book counterpart.
Right.
If you ever have a chance, just Google Adam Strange and see what you see, and then think about the show, and you're just like, okay, well, all right, let's see where we go with this.
Yeah.
So what else did you see, Bobby?
What's that, Michelle?
What else did you see, Bobby? What else you see?
So I got a chance to watch Moon on Netflix with Sam Rockwell, directed by Duncan Jones. Hadn't seen that before. And I liked it. It was definitely a different type of story than I had heard things about it in the past. And the basic setup is that Sam Rockwell is playing an astronaut who's on the moon, obviously, who is there for a 3-year contract in order to kind of watch over this station that mines minerals to be able to use for Earth. And he's nearing the end of his contract, his time to be on the planet. And then he starts, without going into any spoilers, things start happening, and it kind of unfolds pretty quickly from there, based on what he sees and how that affects the rest of his time that he's there on the moon. And yeah, if you haven't had a chance to see it, I would suggest going to go check it out. It's one of Sam's first movies I think, and Duncan Jones as well. But yeah, it was worth checking out, and it is on Netflix right now.
That's also a movie I've always regretted that I've never seen because I've always heard so much praise for it. And yeah, I need to watch Moon.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, yeah, for sure you should check it out. I'd like to hear what your thoughts would be on that. And I would go into it more, but, since no one else has seen it, it'd be a little bit hard to.
Right.
But something else I saw was Lincoln, which I hadn't seen before.
Oh, my God.
Knowing that we were going to be watching Ready Player One, I wanted to see a Steven Spielberg movie I hadn't seen. And yeah, that one had moved past me, and obviously most people know that that's with Daniel Day-Lewis playing the aforementioned Lincoln, and it takes place around the time that he's trying to get the 13th Amendment put into effect, but there's obviously a lot of pushback at that time in the political realm as they're fighting in the Civil War, and it really shows Daniel Day-Lewis' portrayal of Lincoln and all the different things he's trying to do to get this passed, and the headaches he has to put up with, and in terms of his family life and his political life as well, because it was a difficult time to say the least. And I really liked it. I didn't know why it slipped past me at the time and why it took so long to catch it again, but I was glad that it was on Netflix for me to get a chance to watch it, and seeing one of, in my opinion at least, one of Daniel Day-Lewis's more or stronger performances that I've seen of him in different roles that he's done, because it's pretty impressive how well the look of him is as Lincoln, and just the way he carries himself. He feels very much like he's presidential, but makes him in such a relatable way that you're like, man, I really wish I could have met Lincoln at some point, because he seems like a good guy. But yeah, I really did enjoy it.
Nice. Michelle, you also haven't seen that, have you?
No.
Hey, Bobby hadn't seen it till now. You shouldn't feel guilty.
No, I know.
No.
And it's on Netflix, so you have a chance. Mm-hmm. One other thing I watched was this new movie that came on Netflix maybe within the last week or two, called Roxanne. And it's about the rapper whose name is Roxanne Shante. And it highlights her life when she grew up in Queens as this female MC that was, at the time, really no one else out there doing this. And she was like, it shows her life as being obviously hard growing up in the projects, and just the different things that she had to go through at that time. But the interesting thing I found about it is, because I remember growing up listening to her music and how she had this rap battle diss against this group that was already established at the time, and she just kind of came out of nowhere. And really getting to see this movie and see the backstory of her life and the things she did to get to where she was able to get to in life was really fascinating, interesting, and something I didn't know about, of someone that I remember liking back in the day and being able to know all the lyrics and everything like that. So I found it pretty interesting. And Nia Long's in it, who plays Roxanne's mom, and then also Mahershala Ali is in it as well. And he's, once again, is always such a good supporting actor in anything he's in. And a few other people that I know from the rap world are portrayed in this movie, and I didn't know it at the time, but when they say that that's who they were, I was like, oh man, that's awesome, because I didn't know there was these different connections and this part of the backstory with some of the characters knowing each other from way back then. But it was very, I liked it. It reminded me of a part of the past that I remember growing up with, and I found it pretty interesting.
Nice.
That's it.
That's it
for me.
All right.
That's it.
Thanks, Bobby.
Man, we gotta do more shows.
We should.
Hey, I tried to go through it as fast as I could.
No,
Someone should pay us to do this, so we could just do this all the time.
I know. I think it's just we all see so much, and I feel like it's hard sometimes. And I'm just like, man, we all are so excited about the things we all see, you know. And I'm just like, wow, I didn't really mean to go on about Roseanne that long.
Yeah.
Like. You know, but I'm just saying in general, not just you, Bob. I'm just saying, like, wow, we all really need to do this more often.
Yeah, we should. We should hang out more often. All right, guys, let's move into box office. Let's look at the top 5 of the box office this weekend. At number 5, Pacific Rim Uprising. This film's in its second week, and it's all a decent drop-off, a 67% drop-off to take it down to number 5. Pulled in $9.2 million this weekend.
Man, that's too bad. I feel like it's pretty much dead in the water at this point, at least in the U.S. box office, because this coming week we've got a couple movies that will probably be solid performers in A Quiet Place and Blockers, And then probably I think either if not the next week or fairly soon after, there's Rampage, and then we've got Infinity War, and so I think it's it's pretty much gone at this point.
Yeah, it's domestically it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as we've talked about before, this is a movie that, even though it had a decent opening weekend here in the U.S., it is more an American film made for an international, mostly Asian audience.
Yep.
And hey, that's how the first movie basically made its money, and that's how this movie seems like it's going to make its money, and maybe we'll still get a third film out of it. And yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe.
And number 4 this week, in its third week in release, was I Can Only Imagine. We talked about this a little bit on the last episode. It's holding its own. Number 4, pulling in 10.7 million, a 21% drop off from last week. So hanging in there for a movie that I'm sure, like us, a lot of people have not heard of. Did better than Pacific Rim. At number 3, Black Panther. We saw that finally. I shouldn't use the word finally. I didn't want it to, but it did eventually drop out of the number 1 spot last weekend, and now it's dropped down to number 3 this weekend with a 11.3% or $3 million pull. This is its 7th week out there. So, yeah, Black Panther has obviously had an incredible run with being the highest grossing domestic superhero film ever.
Yeah.
I really feel like if it manages to hang on and stay in theaters by the time that Avengers comes out, that it's going to get another little bump and maybe push it over another record at some point if it stays in theaters long enough.
If it's still in theaters, I haven't seen it a second time. I totally would have if time were just free for me to go see movies whenever. I mean, I would have seen it another time for sure by now, but I haven't. But yeah, once Avengers gets closer, be like, oh man, I want to go see that again right before I go see Avengers. Hell yeah. I see what you mean. At number 2 this weekend, a new release, Tyler Perry's Acrimony, pulling in 17.1 million. I will admit, I wasn't even really aware of this movie. I didn't know Tyler Perry's coming from with that new film.
I think I do recall seeing the trailer for it. It looks pretty intense, quite honestly. And I think not that Tyler Perry doesn't do intense things in his films. I feel like they're definitely very serious topics, but this looks like, whoa, this is, it's got, who is it? Is it Taraji P. Henson's in it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, it looks, I guess the word is intense. Like, she, I guess, is going after her ex, and
like now looking at the pictures, I'm looking at the IMDb right now and reading the very basic premise. I'm like, oh, maybe I haven't seen that trailer, and that does sound kind of familiar.
She gets a little intense on her ex, apparently.
Yeah.
Anyways,
it just kind of seemed like it's something that I've seen recently in the theater, and with Tyler Perry, his movies are always marketed a certain sort of way to a certain people who like those movies, and they always seem to do well for him. I've just never gravitated to any of his movies, and to this day, I don't think I've actually seen any of his movies from beginning to end because they just don't do something for me. And I think that he's an interesting enough director. And I different things I've seen him act in, I actually like him doing different acting roles. And I feel like if he stretched himself a little bit further and did something kind of out of that wheelhouse and in that box, he would probably be pretty good. I know he did one of those movies, and I didn't see it, but it was like the movie in the series that had Morgan Freeman and the Ashley Judd in it, or Spider something. I forget, but it was like this is a series of books. And
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think either he directed in it or he starred as the character again. I forget.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, it's like the Spider. Anyways, so I think he directed it, and it was basically a prequel to those other ones. and he was playing the same role that Morgan Freeman plays, but he was playing him at a younger age. Oh yeah, because the other movies are really good too. Shoot.
And I feel like if he did more down that road and explored different things, he'd even find a bigger audience, and instead of kind of going down the same road that he has. But who am I to say? His movies do really well for what they do and for what he's trying to do with them. So I just think that he's probably capable of doing more, and I would like to see more from him.
Right.
I mean, what was I gonna say? Even his role in Gone Girl, like that, that was a solid performance. I was like, dang, Tyler Perry, And so I feel like he can do stuff. I don't think it's that he's not really getting the opportunity. Maybe he's just picky and choosy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways.
And then at number 1 this weekend was, of course, Ready Player One, new film from Steven Spielberg, pulling in over the 3-day weekend, pulling in $41.2 million. Now, this movie did come out. It was released on Thursday. It actually had its first showings Wednesday night. So its 4-day toll was actually $53.2 million. This movie was tracking, if I remember correctly, between 35-45 or 35-40. And it definitely seemed to get a bit of a bump. I'm assuming probably from word of mouth or what have you. But it did a little better than anticipated. And pulling in $53 million over the 4-day is, in one sense, for a Steven Spielberg movie, with the subject that it's about, I think from a distance can be like, oh, maybe it should have done even better than that. But considering the tracking we were seeing, and we all talked about how there didn't seem to be a lot of buzz around this movie leading up to it. I think most people are pretty happy with how it ended up doing.
And I think I had read somewhere in an article where I saw something where the studio said that they was looking for and would have been happy with something that opened between the $45 and $50 million range. Right. So I think they should be definitely happy that they got $53 million on this one. And I think I also saw that it had $61 million in China. So I mean, it made more there than it did here. So
I think I had actually read, I don't have it right in front of me, that how much this movie made in China, it's the most any Warner Brothers movie has ever opened to in China.
Oh, holy snap. Are you serious?
Yeah, I believe I saw that on Box Office Mojo, and I can try to bring that up right now as we kind of talk about it.
Yeah, because it did well internationally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did well internationally.
Oh my God, that is an insane fact. Sorry, I'm just wrapping my head around this thought. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, no, I was trying to quickly find where I read that. But I'm reading for Box Office Mojo, leading the way with an estimated $61.7 million start in China, the largest opening for a Warner Brothers film in the market ever. So,
that is awesome and crazy all at the same time. Like, wow.
Right?
Sorry. Okay, back on track.
It's just crazy too, because and it's funny, once something happens, you start seeing all the different articles in terms of what it means like with the box office, or comparatively speaking to this director's other past things and stuff like that, and trying to put it into perspective. And one of the things I had saw where it said that this is Spielberg's best opening since Indiana Jones 4. And when you think about how long ago Indiana Jones 4 is, you're like, man, how can that be?
But then you have to also,
yeah. So you also have to think about the fact that, well, how many big blockbuster 4-quadrant movies has Spielberg tried to put out since Indiana Jones 4? And there's really only been, maybe a couple since then, I'd say. That maybe try to hit all 4 quadrants, and one being most recently the BFG, which didn't do well.
Right.
But yeah, so it's not
most
like
of his
he's
stuff,
been trying.
Most of his stuff for a little while now has just been kind of the more serious, kind of pseudo, almost independent seeming kind of films, that he's been doing, like Lincoln that you brought up, and Bridge of Spies,
almost like passion projects for him.
Kinda, yeah.
Quite honestly.
So yeah, I mean, when I saw that too, I had seen the same thing. Like, oh, leading up to this weekend's numbers, like, oh, this stands to be like the most money he has made in an opening weekend in 10 years.
10 years.
I was like, really? Like, he hasn't had anything else that's made that much money in 10 years. But then, yeah, when you think about the kind of films he's been making, I'm like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I guess that does make sense.
Well, it's impressive. Like, I'm looking at this list, and it's Indiana Jones 4, 100 million in 2008, Lost World Jurassic Park, 74 million in 97, War of the Worlds, 64 million in 05, and Jurassic Park, 50 million in 93. Like, those are his highest grossing ones right there.
Right.
Those are the highest grossing, like, opening weekend ones that he's had, and that's a pretty sporadic spread there.
And I mean, yeah, of course, we're coming off a movie like Black Panther that just did insane numbers, and then also before that, a Star Wars film, and that also just insane numbers, that it makes these numbers sound so, 50 million. Like, I mean, 50 million is good.
No, 50 million is amazing in film. It's just that I think we're so used to the superheroes now. And I've said it, like, I feel like I'm so used to superhero numbers. I'm like, oh, that's all it's pulling. That's it.
And yeah, I mean, and then we're not even going to get to it, but yeah, I know there was word, I think today or this week, that, Solo is, I mean, it's distance tracking at this point, but Solo, a Star Wars story, is tracking for like 150 for its opening.
Night.
And yeah, when you think about that, it's like, 50 million sounds so lame. But anyway. So this movie is, of course, based on the book Ready Player One. This book was released back in 2011. This was the debut novel for author Ernest Cline. Ernest Cline also worked on this film. I believe he co-wrote the screenplay.
Yep.
I forget who worked on it with him, but I don't have that name right in front of me.
Oh, come on. You're supposed to be rich.
Zach Penn, right?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, that's right. It was Zach Penn. Let's get right into it. We won't talk about spoilers about this movie at first. We've all seen it,
juncture.
but I have a good feeling we will get into spoilers. But this will be the last thing we really talk about today. So once we decide to go into spoilers, we'll give everyone plenty of warning in case you haven't seen this and don't want it spoiled for you. We'll let you know before we go down that road. Also, while we're not talking about spoilers for Ready Player One at first, we will also not talk about spoilers for the book. For those of you who have not read this book and might be interested in reading it, because without getting into too much, there's definitely major differences between this and the book. And we have all read/listened to this book. So we won't get into spoilers for that either. Maybe we will during our spoiler segment, I don't know, but anyway, just wanted to mention that. All right, Michelle, you were the first person.
Wow.
You were the first person to read this book.
I was the first person to bring this all up to y'all.
And you've always been very excited about the book, and obviously excited about this movie coming up. And I have to ask, what did you think about Ready Player One?
I would say after first viewing of this film, I really enjoyed it. This was a lot of fun for me. I can't say that this is a great. If I look at film and I say, "Oh, that is a great film," is this a great film? No. Is this a ridiculously fun, awesome trip down nostalgia lane that's gonna give me all the warm fuzzies and make my little nerd pins tingle on end? Yeah, this was fun. This was great. Like, I can't really complain about it on that side, like, I don't know. It just, it hit a lot of the nostalgia of my childhood for me, and things that were fun. And this thing, it's crazy, is there's so much more. Like, if you read the book, there's so much more. Oh my God. And it's funny because when you really look at the book, you're like, oh, we're going to make this into a film. I was like, how the hell are y'all going to make this into a film? Like, there's just so much to it. But I think they did an outstanding job. Yes, there are some major changes. But I think to the core of the book, they hold pretty true on the thought processes. And in a way, I'm a little sad because I feel like there was a couple of points that they didn't drive as hard as I think they did in the book. And I think they could have gone there a little bit in the movie. Again, I can't really even say a lot because it's kind of spoilery, but yeah, no, it's fun. I had a really fun time watching it. Like, you know, you see certain icons pop up and I got all like excited and giddy. I was like, oh my God, look who it is. Look what's happening. Look, do you see this? Am I the only person seeing this? Oh no, I'm in a theater full of people that are all seeing this, but we're all seeing this. This is awesome, right? Right? Everybody thinks this is so cool, right? Yeah? Cool. Great. Okay, awesome. And so yeah, it's just, it's a nerd fest, and if that's what you're into, then I think you're going to enjoy this movie. I feel like if pop culture, especially pop culture from the late 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and even a smidgen into this new millennium, I would say that if you just really don't care about any kind of pop culture in film or books or comics or video games or arcades or music, or, you know, if you're not into any of that stuff, this is just not the film for you, period. You're not going to enjoy this because that's basically everything crammed into it. I will say, as far as a Spielberg film goes, and I am absolutely nowhere near rating my thoughts on where Spielberg films are like the top 10 list or anything, but I would say watching this, most of the movie, I was like, I'm having a hard time believing this is a Spielberg film. Like, this is a Spielberg film? But then there are these moments that pop up and you're like, yeah, there it is. It's Spielberg from the early 80s, and which makes sense to me because of so much that focuses in on the 80s pop nostalgia. And there's a lot of things that Spielberg did in his films from the early 80s that seem to kind of reflect on this one. And a lot of the themes, the underlying themes that he had in those films are kind of what's happening in here. And I enjoyed it. But yeah, it was interesting how there were times I literally was like, this isn't a Spielberg film. And then there's times like, oh yeah, there it is. That's a Spielberg film. This has got those feels for me. But I feel like the film kind of comes in and out of that feeling for me throughout the entire film. So, and yeah, I can't get into any spoilers, but overall, I'm happy with the film. I think it does good justice to the book. Obviously, they had to change a lot of stuff. I am happy with the changes. In spoilers, I might go over anything I can think of that I'm not happy with. But right now, yeah, all good.
All right. Bobby, you then also, you listened to the book before I got to it.
Oh, such a good Easter egg for later. I can't wait for spoilers. Oh,
God. Okay. And I, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you were a big fan of the book that you listened to. And what did you think of the movie?
Yeah, absolutely. Big fan of the book. And I think the book, it's weird because I've seen reviews since the movie's come out of people who have read the book and people not liking the book, and I was like, wow, really?
Yeah.
And kind of hearing their opinion of why they didn't like the book, I was like, man, I didn't get that vibe at all. But to each their own. But I felt like when I came out of the movie of seeing I was ecstatic. It was like pure joy in a way that I hadn't felt in quite a while, and most of that came from the fact that I grew up in that 80s era, so seeing a lot of that stuff really played on nostalgia for me, obviously, but also just because it was a good way in which I thought the movie blended putting things in perspective for what life was like in the real world and why you would want to spend most of your time in this video game called The Oasis. And it really showed that to be able to do something and spend your time doing things that you enjoy, it highlights that this is a place where it could be like our future in a sense, because the world around us sucks so much that you just want that escape. And I think overall, if there's a lesson to be learned, it's also you have to balance that time. You can't spend all your time with your head in the clouds. You also need to try to make your own reality and the reality around you a better place as well, as opposed to trying to just escape from everything. And I really thought it did a good job of blending aspects of what worked in the book and then elevating certain things that wasn't in the book, and being able to have some of the relationships play out in a different sort of way than it did in the book. But just as a movie on its own, it felt good to see Spielberg playing in this realm of adventure again, because that's what it felt like. It felt like a nice, good adventure. And those movies are always such a fun time because it's free-spirited, and it gets you into a feeling where you're going on this journey with these characters, and you're going from place to place. And that element of in the movie of them having to solve these different riddles and puzzles, you really can't help but to get into it because the characters are into it. And there is so much more that I would have loved to have seen from it, but understanding in the confines of this being a 2-hour movie, you can only see so much. But from what we got, it was very exciting, and it just made me feel really, really good, and wish, honestly, that Ernest Cline had already had his sequel written so that I could just go out and read that or listen to that just to see the follow-up after seeing the movie, because it really left me with this high of like, oh, now I really want to catch the sequel once that one comes out. But obviously I don't know how far he is in terms of writing it, so it'll probably still be a while before it comes out. But yeah, I wasn't ready to leave that world after the movie ended, and that's probably one of the higher compliments I could pay towards it.
So yeah, I also listened to the audiobook like you did, Bobby. I also very much enjoyed it. And yeah, I've been kind of seeing the same thing as we've been getting closer to the release of this movie. And I've been hearing then more opinions about that book leading up to it, mostly from, like film critics and film bloggers. And I have here and there been hearing a lot of, actually wasn't that good. And I'm like, really? Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, this wasn't like a serious adult novel. It wasn't War and Peace by any means, but, it was, I thought it was quite good. And there's also been a part of me that's like, are a lot of those opinions from people who read it versus people who listened to it? Because I will say, as an audiobook, I really enjoyed the audiobook a lot with Will Wheaton narrating it, which just felt so fitting, for the subject matter. Anyway, going into this movie, you could see from the trailers they were going to make major changes. That was obvious from the trailers, and I was prepared for that. And I will say, they had to make a lot of changes, but I wasn't really annoyed with any of them. I loved the movie. I thought it was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I will say that there were times that, as someone who had remembered the book so well, since it wasn't that long ago since I listened to it, I did have a hard time at times going, oh man, I'm so bummed they're not showing this, and I'm so bummed they're not showing that. I think it's just hard to separate, yourself from that when you love a book so much and then you're seeing it. And I've always been one to say, hey, when you adapt a book into a film, you really need to just make something that's just its own creation. These are two different mediums. They can't be the same.
Right.
There was a lot in that book that, even though when you're reading it, it feels like, oh, you might think in your mind, oh yeah, you could fit this in 2.5 hours, right? But then, look at the movie we saw and how much they had to cut out, and it was still the length it was. Like, there's no way a lot of that stuff could have been fit into this.
And even the book covers like a length of time too. Like, there's months that go by in the book. Like, it's not like it's
a time jumper
few days.
Yeah. I guess that's why I kind of felt like, after watching it, and I was saying in my part of the review that I wanted more, from what I saw, that I felt like, man, it would have been just, at least for me as a person who really enjoyed this movie, if they could have pulled even more stuff from the book and just made it to where we could have had one movie for each key. Like they're just
Yeah.
3 movies. That would have been. I would have loved that just because you could have got so much more into it. But yeah,
even if they just broke it up into 2 films. Yeah.
I could see that. I will say, without going into details about the book, though, I don't know how that first movie would have been as a solid first standalone film, because the way that first key comes up and
right.
But overall, though, I get what you're saying. Like, absolutely, that would have been great to have 3 films to do this and be able to cover a lot more, because there's just a lot of stuff about the Oasis in general and why things are the way they are in the Oasis and the way it's set up and what people do there.
And even how the reality is.
And reality too, that they just can't cover in this movie. That I found myself watching it going, oh man, are people understanding like why this is like this? Like people who haven't read this book. And now I've been fascinated to hear reviews from people who haven't read the book yet. And I really haven't read or heard any reviews yet, with the exception of like one person on YouTube who loved the movie who hadn't read the book.
That's good.
But other than that, I'm really dying to talk to people who have seen this, just friends of mine. Like if I have any friends that have seen it who have not read that book, I'm really curious to know what they thought. Because part of me is like, will people get this in that, or will it just seem like it's all too fast? I don't know. Like,
no, I had the same thoughts because there's so much to the Oasis, and even just like I said, the real world. Like, there's so much that's happened to make the real world the way the real world is, like to make reality what's happening. And I've wondered like if things were going to get lost in translation, or if you kind of go, okay, I buy this, and really, and this isn't spoilery, but really just from basically that quick intro that the main character Wade Watts has from his monologue that he does at the beginning. Like, are they picking up on this? Because he's talking kind of quick, and there's a lot of information he's giving that basically explains why shit is the way it is. So I'm like, please tell me people are picking up on this. And I'm hopeful that people are getting it and they're understanding it. I also haven't really seen many reviews where they haven't already read the book. And again, a lot of people that have read the book and watched the movie are saying how the movie's so much better than the book was, and they're not really loving the book anymore. And I'm like, well, no, I like both of them equally. I like them as complete standalones almost. Like, it's crazy, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
I mean, I was gonna point to that too, because you brought that up off air before we started, how you've been seeing a lot of people saying, oh, that they think this is actually a better, story than the book was. And I very much enjoyed this film. I as a fan of all of the Easter eggs in this movie and of 80s pop culture and 90s pop culture, I absolutely love the movie. With that said, if I had to pick one of the other 2 experience, there's no way in hell I would pick the movie over the book, in my opinion. Like,
it's not even close to me.
See, yeah.
I mean, if somebody were asking me, hey man, which one should I do? I can only do one. I'd be like, absolutely read the book. No doubt about it. Like, the book is just so much, there's so much more there and so much more to enjoy. And a lot of the stuff they reference is different. And there's some stuff that they get to do in this movie that they don't do in the book that is really cool and really awesome.
I will know.
And but with that said, I don't understand those opinions at all. And this is definitely the time I will say, anyone listening to this that has seen the movie and you enjoyed it and you have not read this book yet, like, if you enjoyed this movie, I don't see how you would not enjoy this book, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I've said it before, like, if you're not one to read books, absolutely listen to this audiobook. That's how I consumed it, and I loved it.
That's all 3 of you consumed it. Yasha did too. He listened to it. I was gonna say, I'm the only one that's actually read it, and I read it back a while ago.
I mean, 14? It came out in 2011, so
13.
It's sort of weird in that I feel like a lot of my favorite podcasters and YouTubers that I will listen to for their thoughts and opinions on pop culture and movies and stuff, I feel like they're starting to become film critics, and that they are becoming more curmudgeon or of a sort, because I don't know what it is, but they seem to be hating more things than they're loving. I don't know if that's just because they watch so much stuff, but I feel like I watch a ton of stuff, but I don't feel like I've become a critic per se, critic in quotes, more so than just still an enthusiast and a fan of film. I don't know. It seems like they don't enjoy things as much as they used to. But that's just sort of how I've kind of felt, at least about some of the people that I tend to listen to and check out.
Yeah, it's been very interesting to kind of hear the mixed reviews on this. And I'm saying mixed reviews, and I'll say overall though, I feel like some people they've really enjoyed. I feel like the fan base that this film / book are going after are having a fun time with this and just loving it. But I feel like if you're kind of not in that group, you might kind of go, okay, it's kind of cool and the effects are really awesome, but it was all right. And I think you just kind of have to be a little bit of a fanboy or a fangirl. Now, having said that, like, so I took my mom to the movie, and my mom hasn't read the book yet, and we didn't really get to talk that much about it, but she watched the movie and she loved it. She thought it was awesome because she was like, this is all the stuff that I made you and your brothers watch when you guys were kids, you know? And she's like, this is the stuff that I love. She's like, you know, she's like, I made you guys play Atari and Nintendo, and we watched all these movies, and you know, like, so she was like reliving, like, raising us, you know, as she was watching this film, and she was loving it. So I guess that's about all I can speak to. So I think she's curious about the book, because I told her, I was like, the book is way more like in depth in every phase that it goes through, and it's a lot different. I was like, but it's also really good. I'm like, so really can't tell you not to. I'm like, I definitely encourage you to read it. So yeah, I don't know. I think both the film and the book are good. I will say the book I think is better, but the film it stands on its own 2 feet, and it does it well, and I liked it a lot.
Yeah, like I said, I'm curious to hear from people who haven't read that book, what they think of this. I'm also curious to talk to people who are, you know, or hear from people who not only haven't read the book, but didn't grow up with all that kind of 80s and 90s pop culture, and see what they think. If as just a standalone movie, without all that love and geeking out over every little thing you're seeing, like, is it just an enjoyable film for those people? I'm curious
that's my curiosity
know that too. Because there's a lot of that. It's everywhere. I mean, if there's a movie designed for multiple viewings, it's Ready Player One, because if anything, it's almost to a fault where it's just like, oh God, there's too much happening. I want to look everywhere, but I need to pay attention to the story. But I want to just look over to the sides and the edges of the screen to see if there's something over there I'm missing, you know, kind of thing. It
was hard not to do that watching it. Like, I was trying to focus on what was really important, but then it was like I catch something out of the corner of my eye. I'm like, God, oh damn it, I want to go look at that side of the screen, but I really got to focus on what's happening on the screen.
And it can just, for everyone, it's going to be different. The kind of little thing that you might latch onto to be like, holy shit, like for me, and I mean, it's not a spoiler, but like at one point the box from Gremlins comes up.
Oh yes,
and
I forgot about that.
And that was a movie that I watched Gremlins a lot. I mean, we probably all did, I don't know, but I watched it a lot. And when that box pops up, that was like, for whatever reason, of all the references in that movie, there was something about that was just like, oh, it's the box from Gremlins.
Right.
It's the coolest looking thing ever. And you want to be like tapping the people, look what it is, look what that is. You know?
Well, see, I was able to do that because I'm my mom, so I was like nudging my mom. I'm like, dude, look. And she was like, I know. We were both geeking out.
Yeah, and there's just lots of stuff. And there's a moment toward the end of the movie that, you know, we'll talk about in spoilers, that we actually do see a glimpse of it in the trailer. It's not a complete surprise, but still, goddamn it was amazing. And
I think I know.
Yeah, it's an enjoyable film. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm not saying it's perfect, and I can't wait to see it again to see how I feel after a second viewing, because, if anything, my only problem was just getting my mind away from the book as I watched it. You know, it was hard to do.
It was.
And overall, I am happy with the film.
Real quick, what are Bobby and David, what are your thoughts on, like, it being a Spielberg film?
A Spielberg film.
Like, I feel like that's the other big conversation piece I kind of keep finding in people's reviews. And I've only watched like 3 like video reviews that are like our podcast and stuff do. But I've been reading a lot. So I'm kind of curious, like, what are your guys' thoughts just fast on like as a Spielberg film? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, you know, sorry, Bobby. I was just going to say real quick, I think some of the things that he's always been good at he's still good at in this, and that he's really great with younger actors and their camaraderie and just their friendship. I think it works for me, and I buy into it, and it felt very Goonies like,
Yeah.
And, all that stuff kind of works. I mean, as a Spielberg film, I don't know how to really answer that, I guess. I mean, I like the movie, so I think it's a good Spielberg film. I'm saying that too as someone who I feel like Spielberg has been getting a lot of flack in the past few years because he's not making the films like he used to. He's not making E.T. and Jaws and stuff like that anymore. He's making, like we talked about earlier, these kind of more serious Lincoln and Bridge of Spies kind of films. But at the same time, I feel like that's what he's evolved into, and I think he's good at that. Like I love Lincoln and some of the other stuff like that I've seen from him lately. And part of me was worried going into this that he wasn't going to have it anymore in him, like to make a movie like this.
Like Bobby was saying, like his old adventure film.
Yeah, and but no, I thought I was happy with it. I think it works as a Spielberg film. Sorry, Bobby, I kind of cut you off. What were you going to say?
No, it's okay. I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said. I think the only thing I would add to it is more so than me really thinking about it as a Spielberg film. I just kind of thought about it as a film that I'm glad he himself was attached to direct, because so much of it is his work in terms of what's in the book and what's in the movie and the references and stuff. So I feel like more so than me thinking about it being a Spielberg film, I think I look at it as what did making this movie do for Steven Spielberg, and my hope is that it kind of reignited that flame in him of, hey, these big blockbuster movies, I still can do these things, and that returns my sense of adventure, so that maybe I can still continue to make some of the smaller movies, but I can also kind of go back to those roots and make the big blockbusters and the adventure type movies again. Maybe direct the sequel to Ready Player One, or something like that. But yeah, I'm hoping more so than anything in terms of me feeling like this is a Spielberg film per se, that it just kind of opens up those that creative flow again for that type of that filmmaking, that big budget filmmaking on that scale, and being able to do something that is for all audiences and pleases people of all different ages and different personalities and races and genders and everything above.
Right. Cool. I was going to say too, Mark Rylance in this film, I really loved him in the way he portrayed Halliday.
Really?
Yeah, I really dug like just this kind of really socially awkward kind of nerd geek who designed this whole oasis. I don't know. I just thought he nailed it. I really enjoyed it because I was unsure. Like that one time you see him giving the address he gives in the trailer, and they show a glimpse of some of his dialogue, and I was like, what's up with the way he's talking?
It's like he's a guy that grew up in the Valley in the 70s and 80s, and he turns out if you really looked into it, he's on the spectrum, and so he's socially awkward, and he doesn't build very serious connections with people on emotional depth levels because he doesn't really understand that, but he puts himself into the technology, and that's his friends, that's his life, that's his personality. The outside world isn't really his thing.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I'll agree. Yeah, I think he did a good job.
I thought he did a really good job. I was impressed with him.
I think my I don't have issues with him per se. I think it's, and this is, I'm not going to talk about it per se, but I think between the book and the film, his character and the way they utilized him is different in certain ways. Mm-hmm. But anyways, and okay. I don't have problems per se. It's just more like, oh, well, that was kind of a shame. It was almost a shame sometimes. I was like, oh, could have been used better that way. But anywho.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say how his counterpart in the book and in the film is used would be more of a thing that I was kind of like.
I was too.
And I don't have a problem with the way it's done in the movie at all, but I really enjoyed it in the book. So that
I
was
agree.
kind of okay. Oh,
I
okay,
know.
that's cool.
No,
But
we'll talk about it in spoilers.
yeah, which I guess
Wait, which part, David?
Halliday's counterpart. Halliday, obviously
Mm-hmm.
created this whole thing with Ogden
Moro.
Morrow,
Yeah.
which isn't a spoiler to mention. And
Right.
Ogden is the way he is portrayed in the book versus the movie is
Oh, gotcha.
couldn't be possibly more different.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like woo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If all the changes, that might be one of the most drastic.
Yeah.
And not to say it's a fault though. Like
I get why they did what they did.
I get it too, and I'm okay with it. But all
Anyhow.
right, but with that, I don't see any reason why not to go into spoilers at this point, unless anybody has anything else to say.
So anybody need to take a break, get some coffee, settle in, talk some more.
We still got to get that red alert sound effect for spoilers. I haven't done that yet.
Why have we? It's just the Star Trek thing. We just get red alert, mute, red alert, mute. Spoilers ahead. Spoilers ahead.
So yeah, spoilers for Ready Player One from this point on, and I don't know. We might get into stuff in the book, maybe a little bit, but not too much. But yeah, let's do this. I don't know where to possibly begin.
It's hard. It's hard. I will say, well, I guess one of the easiest things is just for funsies. So I was kind of like curious to see how many Easter eggs there are. And obviously this number, when I first saw this number, I was like, wow, that's extremely low. But IGN on a quick count came up with 138 Easter eggs.
Yeah, that doesn't seem very high.
It doesn't seem very high at all.
Seems like
and
there should be
that's-
like way more than that.
And they're saying they're basing it off of visual as well as sound, which is a huge part in this film. So they're saying upon quick look, they got 138, and they're saying obviously there has to be tons and tons more. And so I guess they're compiling a list, and people are trying to like get a big count of this. And it's just interesting because it seems like when you hear things like, you know, it sounds like people working the movie were squeaking in things even behind Spielberg, you know, kind of like eking in things that they could get in there. And so I'm like, God, does anybody have an official count on this? And I don't think there's an official count from the production. So it'll be interesting to see what everybody comes up with, you know, down the road of how many Easter eggs there are in this bad boy. But I don't know. I think for me, I guess, what if we just start with like what we thought was like one of the coolest, best, happiest things that we loved the most? Like, what was our big standout thing? Let's just go with that. Is that an okay place to start?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
We can't walk through this whole film. We'll be here till midnight.
Oh no, we're not going to do that. This isn't going to be a Last Jedi review. That's what you're getting at. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You want to start with that? Like, what was?
I would say probably the one thing. Well, two, because one thing's really quick. I don't think if anybody doesn't know me, they would be. If you don't know me, you obviously this would shock you if you didn't know me. Like, I don't know, you have to know me. But anyways, the Iron Giant was one of my biggest like happy geek things, and I think I made that pretty clear even when the first trailer came out. The Iron Giant is like one of my favorite things. Like, I love that film. There's something about that film that just hits me every single time. I tear up every damn time I see that movie. But yeah, like I see the Iron Giant pop up on the screen, and the first time you see him, he's dismantled, and I was just like, but it's still like, I was like, oh my god, it's Iron Giant. He's an Ages Workshop. This is amazing. Like, I was losing my mind. And of course, then at the end of the film, it gets put together, and you see the Iron Giant in action and kicking ass, and it was just so good. So that, and then I think the quick tie would be, and it is a huge departure from the movie or from the book, and I'm sure you guys are going to agree with me that you loved this. And all I have to say is The Shining.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's easily like a highlight of the movie for sure.
God. Oh, I'll let you guys talk about it. I'm just basking in The Shining gloriousness, and I'll come in on you. But basically, yeah, no, The Shining and H is basically, I feel like, all you have to say, because that, talk about scene-stealing moments right there. H in The Shining.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely is a scene that takes the place of another film in the book, and the setting was a little different as to when it comes up too.
Right.
But in the book, it was a different movie, which I remember when I read the book and that movie came up, I was like, oh my God, wouldn't it be amazing if when this movie comes out, I think I even said this specifically, like if they actually did this movie in the movie, like it would be incredible. Well, they didn't, but they did The Shining, which was awesome. Like it was The Shining. Like the footage was holy shit. Like they're in the movie. You're in
the Overlook Hotel.
Yeah, and they're interacting with these characters that we interacted with ourselves as we all watched that film. And yeah, it was H in it, experiencing it through H's eyes. It was awesome. Like how do you not?
That part was really so cool, just from a visual standpoint. And like you said, David, I was expecting or thinking of something from the book and was hoping that would be there, but we got The Shining, and I thought they did such a good job with it, just from a visual standpoint. And I'm sitting there in a packed theater, and when I see that they're going into The Shining, I start tapping on my armrest. And I don't know that anyone else around me was sort of getting what the aspect of what was about to happen was going to happen. But it was just so awesome. And then when H turns around and sees the twins, and I just was like, oh, I was getting all giddy because you just know what's going to happen next. And it was just so good. And I was like, dang, I want more of this, like in the movie as well. Just scenes playing out from classic movies with these characters in it and having to do stuff, which, kind of harkens back to the book in ways. But yeah, that was definitely one of my highlights of the film. But Michelle, did you have others?
Well, I was just going to say, I even just like the way they did it. It was almost at times watching that scene with H go through it, it was almost like playing a video game, like having the woman in 237 come at him. Her.
I was surprised they showed
spoilers. I
any
could
kind
say
of
her.
like nudity, and not that they showed anything, but just like that much of bare skin.
Right. But I mean, like the way that she came at her, and then the way she dropped into the maze, and then the axe was coming at her in the maze. I was like, oh my God, this is such a good, like, it just felt like you were playing The Shining, the video game. Like, it was literally like, it was just done so well, and it was just so much fun. But yeah, like at one point I literally like H is like, I don't like scary movies, and then she turns the corner and there's the twins, and I was like, oh H, honey, you sweet thing, you're in for such a ride here in a second.
Right.
So no, I thought was spectacular. I think watching the race backwards from underground was really spectacular. It was so, first of all, the car race in general, I thought was spectacular. It was done really well. It was almost overwhelming. There's so many Easter eggs. There's so much coming at you. It was intense and exciting, and it really gets your adrenaline going. But then to watch the race back, the way he did underground was really cool. I really liked that. I thought that was neat. It was just a completely different way to look at that entire scene in a different way.
That reminds me, though, something kind of off subject. Am I the only one that, though, found it kind of odd? I felt like they very glazed over, if not almost didn't explain at all, like the whole opening of gates in this movie.
Yeah, I will say that was surprising because they really don't even talk about like understanding like there's three gates, and the reason you open the three gates is to get to the egg, and then the.
Like, I'm even trying to remember like with the second key in the movie. Like there was so much going on in this movie.
Gosh.
I'm like, how did they? Was there a gate for the second key even? Really?
No.
For the Jade one?
And then there was for the third key, but obviously the Sixers had opened it, and they didn't. He's kind of having to explain, I think, like that they opened it, but they didn't really. That was one of those things that, as a reader of the book, like, or is the whole gate aspect going to be confusing for people? Because I felt like they really just didn't explain it at all.
And I mean, it's one of those things where I think if you're a gamer, you wouldn't have needed an explanation. However, the percentage of people going to that would not. I don't know. I feel like if you're slightly a gamer, you understand kind of levels and keys to kind of gain access into different sections. So I guess in a way you kind of would get it, but at the same time, you still are falling into a category that maybe some people don't fall into. So I don't know. It was kind of weird. I feel like they glossed over a lot to kind of move the story through. Yeah,
I don't know. Part of me was like, man, is that going to be odd? Like, people are like, wait, what's this gate thing? Or they just don't, it doesn't matter. Whatever, it's moving on. And I that's the impression I get from most people.
Yeah.
Anyway, Bobby, any major moments you loved more than others in the movie?
Yeah, there was a couple for me that were obviously we talked about The Shining, but much in the same way that you had that geek out moment, David, over seeing the Gremlins box, or just that that nostalgia, sentimental attachment to, and Michelle with the Iron Giant. For me, there was one quick one and then one sort of longer part that really got me all geeked out. One part was towards the end when they were battling, and I forget which character it was, but the character that was the assassin, or who was the spy who was trying to kill them as they were trying to get over to the other portal area to where they could try and play the adventure game. When he was shooting at them.
Oh, T-Rock.
IROC.
Yeah,
IROC.
IROC. Yes,
the one that was played by
T.J. Miller.
T.J. Miller.
Yeah,
T.J. Miller. Good job on him. That was great.
Yeah. So, go ahead, David.
No, go ahead.
I sound like you were about to say something.
No, I was just reacting to T.J. Miller. I just agree.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so there was a part where he was like shooting at some of the other characters, trying to pick them off, and then his arm gets cut off. But his arm got cut off by the weapon from Kroll. And I don't know about you guys, but I watched Kroll endlessly.
I watched that movie like insanity, and that was a really cool moment because I remember seeing it kind of like come out of, I think, was it Shinto's hands?
I think maybe
or
it was.
Daito's. It was Daito's hands because Shinto was only in it for a hot second in that whole fight sequence, which is another really awesome moment of that film. But yeah, Daito had it, and it shoots out, and all because he was pulling up his screen to pull up what he had in his arsenal, and all of a sudden he goes, "Oh, this will do it," and he shoots that out, and I was like, "Oh."
Yeah, to me that's a movie I would love for them to remake, just because of how different the scenes and the looks and the special effects could be updated. But I used to love that weapon as a kid because it was kind of like a boomerang, but it just had those those bladed edges to it, and the way it would work, and you just throw it out.
It was like a boomerang with Odd Job's hat. It was like this combo killer situation. It was awesome.
And it's so cool looking, and I just was like, oh, when they did that and you see it. So that was one part, and then the other one was, as you kind of alluded to, is that the fight where he turns into the Gundam. Because I was literally just talking about Gundam last week when we were talking about Pacific Rim.
Because he only had it for 2 minutes, and so it's all you could do. But you could be anything for 2 minutes. Oh!
And he was fighting the Mecha Godzilla, and I was like, this is awesome. So that was like my two biggest geek out points.
Like, and the thing is that is pretty. It's pretty much with a book weight. So I was literally like holding out. And I'm like, oh god, he's gonna use it. And I'm like tapping my mom. I'm like, dude, it's about to get really cool. It's about to get really, really, really cool. Watch this. Because I'm like, this is gonna happen. Like I know this is gonna happen. And sure enough, it does. And you're like, oh, it's so good. And they're all, and it's funny because like everybody pauses for a second and they're all geeking out at how awesome the moment is, and they're like, oh wait, we're battling, oh yeah. Like then you'll have to go back to it. Listen to me, I'm getting all geeky. I think my other kind of geek out moment was, after he wins the first key and gets the first clue, he's going shopping with H. And it's like shopping, when you're in a video game and you've got money. You're like, oh, I got money to spend. I'm going to go into a store and buy shit because I got money to spend. And he's walking H through like this, basically in the entire universe. And this does this. And then he comes across the Zemeckis cube. And I was like, the Zemeckis cube. And I just thought it was so cute. Like, I was like, what an awesome. And they pay homage to Zemeckis a lot through this film, obviously, with Back to the Future. And Spielberg's big friends with him, So it, and the Back to the Future theme comes up on and off throughout the movie, but the Zemeckis cube comes up, and I'm like, oh, that's friendship right there. I got all the little warm fuzzies. I was like, that's so cool. Sorry.
No. I mean, I don't know what else other than Gundam to bring up. Like that moment at the end was cool as shit. Like seeing him fight that Mecha Godzilla was awesome. And I mean, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there was a lot of stuff and references that I'm already like forgetting because, like I said, there was just so much to see.
It's so many.
Yeah, I don't know. I need to see the movie again soon. It needs to happen.
There was one little quick one that happened. I was just like, because I'm like you guys said, you're kind of trying to look at different things in the background to see if you notice anything, but at the same time, you're trying to keep focus on the story. And there was one point when all the different avatars are getting together to fight, and they're kind of crowding around. And at one point they show like some stuff from one of the newer video games, Overwatch, and then they showed some of the Spartans from Halo.
Yeah.
In one really quick brief moment, they were showing some of the other avatars gathered together, and I saw Spawn, and I was like, whoa, what?
Oh yeah, he did pop up.
He was there like in the front row of some of the other characters. Like, whoa, Spawn.
Yeah.
And it's just there's tons of stuff like that. So it makes you want to go see it and look for some of the other things that are in there as well.
I think just the cool part was kind of, especially in that last big battle scene, just the juxtaposition between the virtual world and the real world. And you're watching people from everywhere team up to fight, to this battle. And so you see them in the real world on their, with their glasses on and their gloves on, and they're running the streets with fake guns in their arms, and everybody's supporting everybody, and everybody's trying to fight and battle this to get to this last gate, and it was just kind of cool to watch. And I was like, oh, I think they did that really well. And I think they just juxtaposed going back and forth. And even with the ones in the IOI, like, like, and they said this on one of the shows that I was watching, one of the reviews, but they bring Chucky into it. And so what he does is he chucks Chucky, the doll Chucky, out the window. And then all of a sudden, you see these gamers in the IOI all just dying horrific deaths, but only you don't see it in the virtual world. You see it in the real world, and they're like shriveling out of their vest and like, get the fuck away from Chucky, run away. Right. Like, he's murdering us in horrific ways. Like, we're running away now. I don't know. It was just kind of cool. I really liked how they did that kind of back and forth like that. And they did it throughout the entire battle scene. And even when the end game happens, that end game moment comes up and you watch the room go from white and slowly, like a wave, goes to red and everybody just dies. I was like, wow, that was poignant. I was like, that was a good way.
I guess that not reminds me, but kind of leads us into what I was going to ask next and ask you guys about, like, some of your opinions on some of the differences between the book and the movie. Like, just the big things, like what did you really dislike about a change, or what did you really like about a change? And that reminds me, when you're talking about that juxtaposition between like seeing people in the virtual world, and then we were seeing this kind of montage of that and shots of people out on the streets, like basically playing this game. And it was a cool visual, like seeing these people like running around in the streets. But at the same time, it's like, this doesn't make any sense. Like,
right.
In this world,
when you run into someone,
you're running into walls.
These people would be playing like in a rig in a spot where they always are in the Oasis. But if they're just wearing a visor out on the streets, like, you don't see where you're going. You don't see what you're gonna run in. You're gonna run into buildings and trip
Vehicles
over curbs and like it's a cool visual in the movie, and it works. And it's like, oh wow, look, they're riding down a bus or something or a car, and you're seeing all these people out in the streets trying to fight in a virtual world. It is cool, but it's like, come on. I
agree with you. As a filmmaker, that was a really shit move, because it makes no sense, because throughout the entire film you have to be in a rig and you have to be in a stationary room where you know what's happening in your room around you, your surroundings in a way. So maybe not room, but you're in some kind of thing where you can control what's happening around you as you're moving your body freely into doing what your body is about to do. And so then they do this other scene that basically undercuts all of that, and they're all just out in the street running amok, and it makes no sense, because you'll be running into walls and curbs and cars and other people, and like, it makes zero sense.
Yeah, because you can't see what's going on.
And yet it was hilarious to watch.
Right.
Like,
but at the same time, that was another difference too, is like, you see these visors in the movie where it's like you can see kind of their eyes through the lens, But at the same time, you're given the impression that while they're in the Oasis, they can only see the Oasis. But then there's a moment in the movie where Artemis can see, even though she's still in the Oasis, she can see something in the real world. She's still paying attention to the fact that Sorrento is searching for her in that room. And I'm like, this is kind of weird. I think understand.
It's kind of like split screens. You can kind of move screens around and make things bigger and smaller, because it's like you can be like H was doing, and they talk about this in the book. You know, H was in that one world where she was killing everything just so she can gain some more coin, and then Percival comes up on this little screen up in her corner, and she can like see him and talk to him, but she's also still in the game doing what she's doing. And so it's like, I think you can kind of go, okay, well, I need the Oasis to be smaller and in my like peripheral, and I need to see what's happening really quick, because right now in the Oasis I'm doing something kind of mindless, and I need to make sure I'm doing this other thing in the real world.
Yeah, you can make that argument. Yeah.
So I think they can kind of move their screens around a little bit.
I guess to David's point, I would say that I can see that point of it, Michelle, but I think where David's point might lie is that at least from Artemis's character, she's like looking into the real world as she's into the game and looking around and stuff, and maybe just a quick shot of a visualization of that split screen of where she's seeing the real world and seeing, you know, the game from her perspective. That's all you would have needed to relay that fact that, hey, okay, she's able to do these things simultaneously.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other big, I mean, there was a lot of big differences. And sorry, Bobby, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say one for me was that, and I still don't know how I feel because I kind of wrestle with it, because I'm a sucker for a happy ending and everything. But in the book, I remember one of the characters died, and I was like, I wonder why they didn't do that in the movie, because it would have just given it a little bit more emotional weight and consequences to everything that's going on. But they all kind of made it out okay, and I was just like, I remembered someone died, and that was a change.
It was either Daito or Show. I think
it was Daito. It was the older brother. It wasn't the younger one.
Yeah,
it was the older brother. And speaking of emotional weight, I'll say my one kind of gripe, and I mean, I knew this was going to be happening, was the whole Percival and Artemis. And I will say it's hard to buy in that they completely fall in love with each other by this film, because in the film it's over such a very short amount of time. And David and I were actually talking about this a little bit before, Eric. I was bitching about, you know, some of the reviews that I've been reading. And somebody brought this up, and I'm like, I have to say, I don't agree with anything else this woman wrote in her review, but this one point I was like, I do agree with her on this. And he was saying, you know, it's totally, and I agree with what David was saying. You were saying that it was totally believable that Percival has a crush on her, and then it slowly builds into love because he's known about her existence for a while.
Yeah, I feel like the movie did a good job of explaining that.
On his side.
He knows who she is already before he'd even met her. So when he first sees her, he's already like, I know who she is. Oh my God, it's Artemis, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Like, he's got a crush on her. So I can buy into the fact that he meets her. She's this beautiful avatar and everything. And he's already like falling for her.
She's this really hot, badass chick.
Yeah, that works for me. But then on the flip side, like her just immediately being into him as much as she is. I don't know. I've only seen the movie once, but that didn't quite work for me as well.
It was a large leap, and I feel like they could have ended the film a little more on like, wow, we really, really like each other, and we're crushing. But I feel like the way they were alluding it was that they were actually in love with each other. I don't know. It just seemed like kind of a leap, and I feel like they could have dumbed it down a little bit. I just felt like they were really pushing it. And in the book, it totally happens. And I get, but also in the book, it's over the course of months. Like, and there's months that they were together and quote unquote dating, and then there was months where they were separated. And so it's like in the book, it's just, you know, it makes sense. Like there's a timeline. This is like days, like barely. So I don't know. I think that kind of just was my one kind of like, I just don't think this is super weighty here. I feel like they're really pushing this one a smidgen for me. And then I will say I was a little disappointed that they really focused everything inside of Columbus, Ohio, because in the book everything takes place everywhere. And I guess just because they were chopping this to go from a certain timeline down to the timeline they are focusing in on in the real world, I feel like maybe they could have had them flying to different areas because they had money, and the money in the Oasis translates into real world money. So I was thinking, well, why aren't they just flying to different cities to get together like they do in the book? But I don't know.
I guess
I'm nitpicky. That's nitpicky shit.
I mean, but I get what you're saying.
Like,
it seems
magically everybody's in one city.
It does seem convenient that all these people, like you're watching that battle again, and obviously there's thousands of people in that battle, but it seems like a hell of a lot of them are right there in Columbus.
Well, and Iowa's in Columbus, and all of them are Daito, Shito, and they could have come from their cities and met up in Columbus, and they didn't explain that in the film. I don't know, but it just seemed awfully damn convenient. Everybody's in freaking Columbus, Ohio.
I mean, I felt like at the beginning of the movie, he kind of in his kind of monologue at the beginning, was trying to explain that this is kind of a hub. I think, or a major
fastest growing city or something.
So, I mean, I think that's their way of trying to buy you in, to help you buy into the fact that I guess all these people who are really into this kind of thing would all live there. I mean, yeah, it doesn't bother me enough to take me out of the movie, but I agree with you. I thought of the same thing.
I mean, it didn't take me out of the film. It was just one of those little things in the afterthought. Like in the car, I was like, huh, so everybody was just magically all in the same city, huh? How about that? That's convenient.
Right, because in the book, like he was growing up in Oklahoma City, I believe.
Yeah, and he was in
travels
Oklahoma.
To Columbus.
Like she was in the Pacific Northwest, Artemis, and then they wound up in Columbus. And Anywho, we can talk about this for days.
I would say one other thing that was that was in the book that I wish had been in the movie was the there's definitely other things, but one other thing was the joust game and how there was like a live joust representation in the book where they were actually on ostriches, like how in the video game you play in those little levels. Right. I would have thought visually that would have been an interesting thing to explore, but that wasn't in there, so I was kind of like, oh, that's a little bit of a bummer. But yeah, I mean, I guess I get why something like that wouldn't be in the movie. Maybe just from a standpoint of how hard it would have been able to pull it off, the look of it. But the one thing, I guess, if I really had an actual criticism of the movie that I would feel like exploring or talking about was the avatars themselves. And sometimes I felt like it worked and other times it didn't. And there would be times where it tended not to work for me when they were showing medium shots or close-up shots of the avatars and they're talking, because it didn't seem like it always matched up with the voices. And so to seeing the avatar's mouths move and it not looking quite right just kind of took me out of it for a minute. But to their credit, it seemed like they tried not to do that too much. And there's like a lot of different shots where they're not necessarily close-ups on them or you're seeing them with the mouth work moving. But that was probably my biggest sort of gripe in terms of what it looked like with the avatars.
I think they did what they could. And for me, I just kind of chalk it up to video game image looking. Like, that's kind of what I think I just kind of brushed it to. Because I caught it too and was just kind of like, you know what? It's like a video game. It's not going to be 100% in sync. And they are speaking through microphones. And they are, there is technology syncing things up for them visually to look at too. So I guess that all kind of works. I think my one, like, oh, I wish they'd had that scene in is really bizarre because it's a very minor scene. But when he winds up going to the pizzeria place to play the video games, like, and the pizzeria was like closed, and you can just envision this old like 70s 80s pizzeria with these old arcade games, and the chairs are up on the tables, and you can kind of see where the pizza comes out. You can kind of see these little arcade games scattered through the restaurant. And I was like, that in the book was kind of like, oh, I remember this as my childhood, and I kind of wish they'd thrown that in there. And then I think just the underusage of Anarok, the avatar Anarok, which was actually Holiday's character. Yeah. And then the way they did Ogden Morrow, I think it was just interesting, the choices they made there. I'm not liking them. It just was kind of like, oh, this is definitely different. And I get it, and I really do, and I see it, but I was like, oh, okay, this is just not what I was thinking was quite going to happen. And I promised one Easter egg that I thought you guys that you would like, And David, I know, because I asked him after the movie and he didn't catch it. But Bobby, did you catch the Will Wheaton Easter egg that was in the film?
No, I missed it too.
Oh, okay. Here it is, kids. Because Will Wheaton in the book, they talk about the whole Next Generation, Star Trek, and they talk about Will Wheaton. And then it turns out like Will Wheaton narrates the book, as you guys know very well. So there's got to be a Will Wheaton Easter egg, right? Right? Okay, there totally is. So it's the scene where Parzival is with H in his little shop, and he's getting ready to go to the dance, and he's changing costumes, and he's looking and he's doing all these different 80s costumes from very known films, right? So he's changing costumes, but in the mirror there's a picture, and H has got random pictures from everybody, but there's a picture of Will Wheaton on the corner of the mirror. And Parzival looks, and you can see it as you're looking at Parzival. You can see the picture of Will Wheaton there. I was like, there it is, there it is. I wasn't even looking for it. I just was like, oh, there's the Will Wheaton. I knew there had to be one. I mean,
was it Will Wheaton, or was it Will Wheaton as Wesley Crusher?
It was not Wesley Crusher. It was Will Wheaton.
Okay.
So that was the thing. I was kind of, because I figured it was going to be either Wesley Crusher or Will Wheaton. They almost had to, they mention Wesley Crusher in the story, and Will Wheaton does the whole narration. It's a thing. It had to have an Easter egg. Sure enough, there it was. It was a Will Wheaton Easter egg. So there you have it, kids.
I did not see it.
I'm done. I'm good. That's all she wrote for right now. I could talk about this for a long, long time, but I gotta end it somewhere. So
yeah, I don't know. I was trying to think of my thing with some of the differences and changes between the book and this, and I mean there's so much that there wasn't anything that was a big standout that was oh my god, I hate that they changed this.
Right.
I think kind of like I said in my non-spoiler review, it's more just the kind of stuff they had to leave out, just the meat of the story, a lot of the detail was more my thing. I was like, I get it, I totally understand. This movie ended up still being 2.5 hours, or
and there's so much detail that goes into each level that he's playing in to get the key, so much, but
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would guess, I was thrown off that what was the him getting the first key in the book, right, ended up being the last key here, the adventure game, wasn't that?
That was the last I thought in the book as well.
Too.
Okay. I can't remember.
I thought so. I thought the first one.
I read that book a while ago.
Right.
Yeah. It was different. No, it was the same.
Okay. I don't know. I can't really think of anything else. So, I guess that's all for me then.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
So I guess there's one thing that I wanted to ask the both of you. I have my theory and suspicions, but what do you guys think was going on with Morrow at the end of the movie when Percival asks him, you are you alive? And he's like, no, he did die. And then he's like, so what are you? And he just doesn't really answer, and he kind of walks off. What do you guys think is going on there?
Well, he was asking if Holiday was alive. Is he really dead?
Holiday, sorry, my bad.
And he's like, Morrow's like, no, Holiday's really dead.
No, when he was talking to Holiday himself.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
he was talking to him.
To Holiday.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. Sorry.
I think what he's trying to allude is just that, he's physically dead, but that he's always going to live on within the Oasis forever. His imprint of him is so embedded in it that he's not really dead. That's kind of what I took away from it. He's never really dead. I mean, he's physically dead. He's not dead. His legacy, the idea of him, will continue on forever, because it's literally the Easter egg inside of Adventure. That Easter egg will live on forever for the creator of that video game, forever.
Right.
Is that what you got that too, David?
I mean, basically, yeah.
Okay.
That's how I interpreted it. Oh, you took it literally.
No, I took it as maybe he somehow figured out a way to upload his consciousness into the Oasis, and that's where he lives now. And because the fact that he's able to answer such specific things made me feel like, well, how can he program the hologram kind of to be able to answer something specific in that way? unless he was literally his own mind was, some sort of futuristic thing like you see in a web episode of Black Mirror or something, where you can upload your mind into a mainframe of something, and
Right.
that's how you live on, sort of, so to speak.
Wasn't there a whole movie with Johnny
that's
Depp
interesting.
about that?
Yeah, so that's why I kind of think I probably thought of that, but you guys are sort of thinking of it in more of a general sense. But yeah, that's
At least that's
interesting.
why I took it. I mean, I can see what you're saying. You definitely have a good argument.
Yeah, I guess with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up.
It's not a long show at all.
Oh, come on.
It's as long as the film is.
Oh, we'll see.
But it's an entertaining
We'll see
show,
what
gosh
happens
darn
in
it.
podcast post-production.
You can edit out my whole Roseanne rant.
Yeah, we're going to wrap things up. As always, we'd love to hear back from everyone listening. You can let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at feedback@flickereffect.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Just search for Flicker Effect, or on Twitter, it's Flicker_effect. And yeah, with that, I'm David Lott.
I'm Bobby Jackson.
I'm Michelle Hillard.
Thanks for listening.